We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink.
Welcome, everybody. It is that time of the week for your SITREP of the week for June 15th. Welcome. I am Aaron Sampson from a not too far distant future, dystopian future. Every time I listen to that,
it's actually already here.
Every time I hear that startup screen and the music and stuff, it just reminds me of a movie like Blade Runner or whatever. It's like that dystopian future, 80s view of it with the Terminator, you are the resistance. But anyways, guys, it's good to be back. I'm Aaron Sampson. I'm here with my buddy, my brother from another mother, Daniel Stevens.
That's me.
Don't know.
That's me. He's talking about this guy.
Yeah, what's up, Daniel? The clean shaven.
Oh my goodness, yes. I don't have anything to hold on to. It's hot. It's
tell me
it's like 106 with the heat, like with the humidity added in there, and it's you know what I did yesterday for dinner? I grilled. That was not a good that was not a good option. But it reminds me of something that I thought was funny. I'm gonna pop something up on screen here. I think people might get a chuckle out of it. Just make sure we start off on the right foot here. Let's see. This was, as I was reminiscing while I was cooking, this is what I came across. Where'd it go? What's happening?
Did you lose it already?
Yeah, I did. Let's try it again. This was me reminiscing while I was cooking. I started thinking about Kroger, and they have a spot just for me.
I said, for those that aren't watching, it says, I went to the grocery store and they now have a parking spot for fat guys that like to grill. Thanks. So considerate. It's that pregnant parking spot.
Oh, it's pregnant people? I thought. There's the daily chuckle that I had while I was grilling in 105-degree weather last evening. But yeah, man, it's good to be here. I know we had a week off trying to recoup from camping, which, speaking of weather, absolutely perfect camping weather for Shavuot.
It was wonderful.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it was a beautiful time. For those of you guys that don't know, we were kind of trialing out because we know that there's a lot of bigger ministries that are doing Passovers and doing Sukkots. And, Pentecost was like wide open. Shavuot was wide open. So we snatched
It's like the redheaded stepchild of the feasts.
Yeah. So we snatched that one up, and we got some of the listeners from the show, some close people to us who live close, that we fellowship with, that are watch the show. I don't know if you get Jason Windsor, who's been following us and the Through the Black guys for quite some time. We had Sampson there, the other Sampson. I don't know which one if we'd be Sampson 1 or Sampson 2.
Who's the original Sampson?
I don't know. Next time, though, we're bringing our swords. There can be only one.
Axes, no. It's got to be axes. No swords with the Viking.
If you guys don't know, Sampson is before I dreaded my hair, I had long hair. He has long hair, and we pull it back in ponytails, and he's got a beard, big bushy beard. And we were both at Take on the World, and we would wear the same shirts. Like, you can even, if you guys see where we posted up from it, we have the same shirts. We got Take on the World shirts. We have some of our apparel. We have some of the stuff from Through the Black, and we're wearing them on different days. Like, he's like, man, I was gonna wear that shirt today, I'm glad I didn't. But at Take on the World, there's a couple times we wore the same shirts, and we wanted to, when somebody would come up and talk to us, just switch out and see if anybody noticed.
Was just, I think the best one would be like you're just eating, like when we have like the group lunches and stuff, where like you go up to like get a refill, and then he comes back and sits down, where it's like you're not necessarily having a conversation, but like where it's to see if anybody actually would notice, be like, wait, what
was I talking to you?
Man, you're like the episode of Twilight Zone or something.
Yeah, so it was wonderful. What we plan on doing in the future is using this location, probably starting early next year and opening it up to, I think primarily the first year we're going to do this is going to be families. It is a nice little camping location for the weekend. It does have power on site, bathrooms. It's right on a lake. There was a lot of amenities. It was pretty cool. We ended up taking a little jog up about a half an hour away and went to a waterfall and some other stuff. So it's right between Ohio and Indiana. So I know for a lot of the listeners, a lot of people that are local that go to take on the world, it might be something that they can jump on. So we'll talk. We'll as that time comes back around next year, we'll try to do that again. We had some really great discussions. We read through some commentary from Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes and just such amazing talks, and then reading into Acts 2, just talking about what we were doing there, what we were doing at Pentecost. And we had prayer time, and we got to have like a circle of prayer where everybody got to throw in what they needed prayer for, and it was just a great weekend, and I would love to see that grow into something bigger. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's interesting because I saw, like you guys know me, I'm not on Facebook a ton, but every once in a while I peruse on there and saw some people asking questions of what do we do for Shavuot? Like what am I supposed to be doing? What are the Torah instructions for following Shavuot? And it's one that has like very limited, like do this and don't do that and blah 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 blah. I think we hit all of them nailed like straight on the head. We had food, we had fellowship, a good conversation. We got into scripture, it was really cool because I think it's a good time for people to kind of just like recenter, halfway through like the whole feast cycle and everything. We've had Pentecost, Passover, back almost 2 months ago, and you're coming up 7 weeks, from that. And so it's just kind of like stuck there in the middle. And I think that what I've really found really cool about Pentecost and Shavuot is it's a really good time for reflection. There's a whole, that like you're counting those days like leading up to it, and it's a reminder of the verse. I don't know if someone in the chat knows the verse off the top of their head, the one that Yeshua said, "Look up, for your rescuer is coming. He's drawing nigh. He's coming soon. He's getting close." And so it gives us this anticipation and a looking forward to what what he's coming back with, and an extremely spirit-filled message of repent, because things are going to be when things start when the earth starts shaking. Like you don't want to be trying to figure things out. Then you want to have continued running the race and continued focusing on the prize at the end of the road, and not be some last minute thing where you're trying to run a marathon in 2.5 days before the rapture, because we don't know when that is, right? That could be tonight at midnight.
Look, we got Les Blaze jumping in the. He said it's Luke 21:28. But then these things begin to take place. Straighten up, lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Thanks, yes. Wes, for dropping that in there.
Absolutely. But yeah, it was a really good time. I enjoyed it. Some good late night fireside conversation. And for any of the PETA supporters out there, we did shoot a raccoon with a BB gun several times because he was being an honorary little booger.
Did you guys?
You gotta ask Sampson about it, dude.
Was
it
the pellet gun or the salt?
No,
gun?
yeah, it was just the airsoft gun.
Wow.
And that raccoon, I'm telling you what, he took the first one like right on the dome.
That thing
okay,
was
and
huge.
then he just looked at Jason like, dude, that did nothing to me. I want those hamburger buns, and he stayed there all night. He was just ripping through people's camps all up along there. We're just, we're like, man, he's just hungry. Let him be. We're just going to keep going over the conversation. It was hilarious, man. Up until like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then then Jason pulls out the. I mean, because it was like 2:30. He pulled out the pellet gun, and it was loud. It was loud. I'm like, you're gonna wake up half the campground. It was shenanigans, man. But it was super enjoyable time with brothers, and just getting in those fun conversations where it's like we're all brothers here. We're not like debating theology. Like it is a lot easier when people are coming from a fairly similar mindset and understanding of the scriptures. But just getting to have those fun conversations. But yeah, definitely looking forward to next year already, and hopefully we can grow it and get some more friends and family out there and have another good Pentecost next year.
Yeah, Kelly Joe's giving our spot away. She's
Oh,
putting up in
she's
chat.
she's dropping
You
the bomb.
better hide that, Kelly. Yeah, no.
Message retracted.
Yeah, right. That's classified until next year. No, it's it's on off the Brookville Reservoir. It was a beautiful place over there. Like I said, it's right between the majority. It's real close to the Ohio-Indiana border. So I highly recommended the campsite there. It was awesome. So we're gonna do that again next year. But I want to just shout out to people in the chat. I see a couple of new people in here. Of course, we got Kelly, who's giving away all of our secrets. I see Katcha. See who else is in here. AC, what's going on, AC? Victoria, hey, how's it going, Victoria? It's good to see you in the chat. Of course, we got Wes Blaze and we got Jamie Christopher. So yeah, good to see you guys. If you guys are listening and you're not in the chat, make sure you guys pop open that chat and jump in and say hi, so we know where you guys are here. And we may, I was talking to Daniel earlier, so I've been going through some training for this training class. So I'm training to train, right? This is part of my new Sampson, the corporate trainer. But they were training us on how to do Zoom training calls and all this kind of stuff about engagement. I'm like, you know what? I really do enjoy the interaction we have with our chat, but we need to really be more engaged with you guys. So we're really going to try to focus on that because we love the interaction with you guys. It's not, the whole idea of SITREP was not just about this is my show or this is our show. This is a community show. We want you guys to be interactive. That's why we built the fellowship page. That's why, we put our email out there if you need prayer. It's more than just watch us, be lecturers, in a lecture hall,
Well, yeah. It's because it's interesting because even in the name SITREP, situation report, the military term that it is, it doesn't come from just two people giving their opinions about everything. It's two people analyzing what everyone's bringing in. Like everyone says, hey, did you see what this was going on? Hey, over here, I saw this was happening. In this part of the body, they're needing prayer. And so it's just the culmination of all those pieces of intelligence and spiritual intelligence that need to be sometimes combined, collected, put into some fashion of an easy to digest format and kind of put back out there for anybody else who may not. Cause even for me, because I don't sit and watch the news all day. I don't know. I had no idea what was going on with in Montana. It was Yellowstone. Was it Yellowstone? It's getting smoked with flooding and stuff. I had no idea that was going on. Zero clue until I think I saw someone mention it over on Wes's channel actually earlier today. I was like, well, what's happening in Montana? What's going on? Completely unaware. So sometimes it's in instances like that we're able to on spiritual topics, biblical topics, sometimes current events, be able to collect some of those that we're getting from different places and kind of put them all together. And then I think an important part of, I guess, what SITREP is going to be growing into is putting together an action plan. Hey, we're going to do something with this intelligence that we've gathered and disseminated to the rest of the troops. We're going to put together an action plan and actually be able to get out there and start doing something with it. Not just being the messenger, but being, I think what we're truly called to be as true disciples and go out and start doing stuff, doing the discipleship stuff with other people and growing this family and this community, not just to get people to believe what we believe, not just to be parrots of someone else's teachings or anything like that, but to truly be the hands and feet of Yeshua, right?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think we saw a lot of that with, what we were doing. It's like, it's not just about being, like speakers of the word, but doers of the
Right.
word. Like,
Come on
and
now.
it's one thing to talk about stuff, but it's another thing to put in action. And that kind of brings me to the point of what tonight's episode is. For one, like I said, if I was ever going to have a popular, YouTube channel or whatever, because I know how like truther communities are. I've been a part of the truther community forever, right? So
Right.
as soon as somebody does this, or they put, like they do some kind of
I'm gonna
weird symbolism,
expose him.
yeah, somebody's gonna take a screenshot and they're gonna create an exposed video. So I was like,
Yeah.
man, I always want to be on top of it. I want to do a video of SITREP exposed. Because I did it with one of my first videos I did on my original channel, on my Omega Chronicles channel, was Sampson exposed, and it just talked about my kind of what got me to where I'm at. It was basically my testimony, a portion of it. I wanted to do it in 3 parts because there's a whole lot that more needed to be added, and then bring my wife in because she's a huge part of my testimony. But I don't see anything wrong. Like, I think it's a perspective thing, like a lot of things. Like, being exposed is not really that bad of a thing. Like, especially in the community that we're in, we're supposed to be. So I pulled up what the definition is, and it says not covered or hidden. That's just kind of one of the definitions, where nothing is hidden, right? Nothing
Not
is
occulted.
protected, right? And
Right.
the other one is not sheltered or protected from weather, which that's not really applicable. But in a vulnerable position or situation. I mean, we're
Mm.
called to be humble. We're called to be open and honest, and be transparent. I think that was another definition I saw in one of the other. So that's what I really wanted to do. Let's do an episode where we talk about like what's going on in our lives, like, because we talk a lot about the things that we are doing in our walk, and we are by far not perfect by any means. You know what I mean? We struggle with the same things everybody else does. We deal with the same issues. So I really wanted to do an episode that just said exposed. So if anybody ever does do an exposed video, like we're at the
That's the
top
first
of
result.
it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I think it's a great topic to talk about because we want to be vulnerable. And I think that's what we did at Shavuot. I mean, we had the
Absolutely.
Safrancos there, and we got to talk with them about what was going on with their hopefully,
Adoption. Yeah.
Lord willing, their daughter's adoption process, and they got to be vulnerable. We were all vulnerable with each other, talking about things. I mean, Jason Windsor brought up some really important things when he was talking about stuff. When he was saying, the disciples were vulnerable with each other. They were men who were close, but they didn't hide stuff from each other. Like, they talked about things, and how do you hide stuff from when you got Yeshua in your presence, right? Who can see the hearts of men? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Not going to go too well for you if you think you're going to be able to hide from him, when he can level the entire earth, and even expose the people who are hiding under the rocks. It was a fool's mission to think that they could cover themselves to the point where the king couldn't see them. So
yeah,
man, in our walk, we need to be practicing exposing ourselves. We need to be practicing getting to the point where we shed the pride and we let go of the pride that society and cultural norms have taught us to tuck them away, push them under the rug, and act like a big strong man. And yeah, it was. I know there was a few families that stayed an extra night during the camping trip, and we got into that same conversation of how important it is. Not always for the people just to be putting all their business out in front of a giant group, but especially in those circles of really good close fellowship, especially with us men, that we can say, hey, you know what, there's things I have to confess that I'm been holding on into my life, and because the scripture says confess these things one to another so that there can be healing from those things.
amen.
And so it's not always just about confessing to the Father, right? It's about confessing to one another, and be able to hold each other accountable, and be able to disciple one another, and be able to encourage one another with, like, dude, you're not the only one dealing with that, and I know that it's such a abnormal thing. Just, and I get to speak from a man's perspective specifically, and I know it applies to men and women alike, but from my experience, man, there's never been more powerful change in my life than when I was able to open up my chest and show someone the things that I was trying to hide and let it all out. And then all I got to hear was, dude, you're not the only one struggling with that. You're not the only one dealing with temptations. Not the only one dealing with pride. Just in day to day life. You're not the only one struggling with the stresses of trying to be a good father. Like all those things that we act like is something that we can't let anyone else see, or else we're going to be viewed as weak, and then our opinion won't matter and all that stuff. So yeah, I totally agree.
Hey, I'm going to jump in here and say hi. We saw we got a couple more people that jumped in the chat, so I want to say hi.
Yeah, I saw Miss Marcia jumped in too.
I see Asaya CF, I'm assuming. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry. Marcia is in the chat. Hey, Marcia. Mama Sampson's in here. Kelly Jo said something. Oh, she said she was in the area. She must be close. Kelly, you should have let us know. Well, we should have let you know. Next time we'll get you in. I didn't know how close you were. That's awesome though. Let's see who else we got in the chat. Okay. Oh, I see what everybody's talking about right now. Everybody's talking about the processing plants and all that stuff happening. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening right now. I mean, the processing plants is one. There's a thing called DEF. I don't know if you guys are familiar with diesel engines. Needs to have DEF. It's like a fuel
diesel exhaust fluid.
Yeah. And that is like going through the roof right now because it's made out of urea, and the number one distributor of the urea, like to first world countries, is Ukraine. And so that's like, which is kind of funny because I think we have plenty of like piss around here. Like, why don't we create our own? It's like made out of cow urine or whatever. I'm like,
really?
Can we not just make our own? Like, I don't understand what. But that doesn't affect your average everyday person, but it does affect semi trucks, transportation, cost of
supply lines.
Yeah, supply lines.
Getting food to places before it goes spoiled. Yeah, definitely a big part of the logistics industry, for sure. And that's not even talking about the price of gas that it is just to get one of those trucks across the country. Like it's like, yeah, struggle. It's a struggle for everyone right now.
It is a struggle, but remember, guys, this was one of the things that like just hit home for me when we were reading. I think it was from Matthew 5 or whatever. Right. It was talking about all these things like that God is ultimately in control of this, that he makes it rain on the just and the unjust. And he like all of these, like this one passage that just talks about the birds not needing to worry about the food, and how much more he cares about you. Really, I think that a lot of this kind of stuff is to test us. I mean, honestly, I do. Like, do we freak out? Do we hoard? Do we, like huddle up, or do we help each other? I think that's one of the biggest things that I saw from Acts 2, which like was hand in hand with this, was that they all met together. Acts 2:42. It's what we built the Acts 2 for the Mission 242 off of. They broke bread together. They prayed together. They fellowshipped. But if any man needed something, they would sell stuff and take care of each other. This is what our community's missing. And I think Sean Griffin was, they're hitting it. In a place where you can go fund, like use that platform to get Christians out. This new platform that they're trying to build.
Goodland.
Yeah. That's a beginning. I mean, that's fantastic that we can help support businesses, but as on a fellowship level, on a brother and sister level. I mean, I just look around my house. I mean, I feel like, Shawshank Redemption, right? When the guy's at the very end, he's like, man, if I could have sold my car, or, this could have saved 15 people, or this could have saved 5 people, and I could have sold this. Like, I look around my house and I'm like, man, what could I sell, like, to help people? Like, I got to take care of my family too, but the mindset is different. Like, I know that God will take care of us regardless. Like, because he promises us, and we have to remind him of that promise. If we get into those situations where it's tough, to fill my tank up, it was like $80 some or something like that. And, I get it, and we're supposed to get like the government support thing, another $250 check. I'm like, what? That's going to like fill your gas tank twice. Right? Like, what's that going to do? Right. Yeah. Obviously the government's not going to help us. Right. And honestly, I'm surprised that nobody's looking into that whole, like there's like this, like 12, or was it 13 monkeys where they had the vegan group that was like running around like being terrorists. Like this sounds like something like there's like this underground like, PETA vegan group that's burning these these like,
Oh my god.
these processing plants down, and nobody's like, no, and the Facebook's like, no, it's not real, it's not happening. The Facebook
The fact checkers.
it's like there's somebody running around going, as long as Facebook's on our side, we can burn all these things down. Like clearly there's something going on, but do we get steeped in the idea of, we know this world's jacked up. It's ran by the prince, of darkness. You know what I mean? And we have a government that's in. I mean, we have a president here that's, he's stage 3 dementia at this point. You know what I mean? So if he's even the real one, I mean, like I've seen some things where I think they've got like an actor that's replacing him at sometimes. Like, do you see the video of him like getting out of an Uber to get on Air Force One?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's like, what is going on around here, man? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
But I mean, you can really you can let it overwhelm you. We can be worried about these things, but Jesus himself tells us that all of these things and more are going to be coming, much worse, plagues, famines, all these wars, rumors of wars. And he says, do not be deceived. And do not worry. Like that's what we're supposed to, what he's calling us to do. The only way we're going to stand out amongst the tax collectors and the pagans, right? The Gentiles, is if we're not bowing down like they are. We're not worried. We're not, we need to be set apart and walking the way that he's asked us to walk. And that's to trust him. The world can fall to pieces. If he wants to bring us into a Goshen and take care of us, he will. But he's only, he's going to take the faithful. We can look at an Exodus scenario and look at what happened in the first Exodus. And, there was a lot of situations that happened where the people who were murmuring, complaining, conniving, worshiping false gods, didn't they
slip and fall into a hole?
Yeah. Or dude, I was so surprised. I think it was because of when I watched the Moses movie, like back in the day, right?
Yeah.
That the ground opens up and they all fall in. And then I read the scriptures for myself and was like, oh my, Abraham told his buddies his generals go grab some swords and go kill 3,000 men. It's like, wait, what happened? I thought they fell into the ground.
Right.
What's going on here? No, Abraham was like, I've had enough.
Moses.
Moses. I'm sorry. Yeah, Moses.
Moses. Right. Okay. I'm like, I was like, I need to go rewatch the 10 Commandments then, because I was like, Abraham was there. I need to reread a whole lot of scripture. No, it was funny something you're mentioning.
That's like time traveling Abraham at that point,
right? Right. I was going to make a theophany joke, but I won't. Anyways, what was I going to say? Oh, you were talking about fearing God. It's what it pointed me to. I think that when we're looking at all this craziness that's going on, everything in the world tells us to fear. Every one of the major crises in the past 20 years have been breeding fear on top of fear on top of fear, and we fear one another. If we're looking at us wrong, we're gonna catch the sniffles. If someone looks at us wrong, we're going to get swept away in a flooded river. Just constant fear out of every orifice of mainstream media and everything that they're trying to point us to. And I think they're right about one thing: we are supposed to fear, but just not what they're telling us to fear. The fear of Yah is the beginning of wisdom, and that's the point where we truly can walk through this fire. We can walk through this tribulation, literally letting it roll off our back like water off a duck's back. Literally let everything just bounce off of us because we're so confident in the one who's never let up on his faithfulness. And I think that it's just, I think we had this conversation. Maybe it was over the weekend. I think maybe it was you or me talking, or over this past weekend when we were camping, talking about the fact that, through some of the struggles that in my family's, recent 6 months, Malik's 6 months old today, 6 months ago, he was coming 3 months early, and there was a whole lot of fear trying to be pushed onto us, and there's not a whole lot, there's not a good chance that he's going to make it, and all this stuff, with the baby that's that early, um, just a whole lot of testing and trial, and and my wife's question to me is like, how are you so calm through all of this? And it was like, I wish I could say, well, yeah, I'm that confident. I'm that confident, and I just know. But the reality was that it was his peace, because I truly had nothing left in myself, and I had to lean everything that there was to fear. I had to lay it down at his feet and say, hey, there's nothing left I can do, because if it's just me, I'm going to fall apart, absolutely fall apart at the seams. And it was such a good reminder, and it's such a good lesson for me. I mean, because I'm a baby, I don't know about anybody else. I've only been in this. I've been a Christian my entire life. I've only been a believer for 5 years, um, and so I'm a baby to this. And so there was some really steep learning curves that I've had to go through, even in the last year and a half, with both of my little ones being premature and whatnot. And there's just been just time and time again where he continues to show us supernaturally how he is taking care of us. And it may not always be an Exodus type situation, but he will always be there with us through the fire.
Yeah.
And
I was gonna say, and that's what I like though, because you use that terminology, fire, but that just reminds me of like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
exactly.
Like, because I love what they say in that moment is like,
Even if,
we're not gonna bow down to this statue, and even if our God doesn't save us, we're still not going to. It's like,
yeah,
we believe He's going to, but even if He doesn't, we're still not doing what the world wants. And I think that's the mentality we need to have, because just like Jamie Walden put it, what's the worst that can happen, right? They kill you, you're steadfast in your faith, you go to be with the Father, right? Or you go to rest in Sheol. You don't have to worry about this, this scenario anymore, this crazy world and the way it's going. So I'm like, we should live like that, like with that mentality.
yeah,
Like, I know people like in real life that they live so carefree, in their self, right? They're adrenaline junkies. Like, I used to ride motorcycles with, we'd be riding around 465, like our main interstate around Indianapolis, doing wheelies, like, because we just didn't care, right? Because what happens? Well, if I die, I die, right? That was the mentality. I used to make a joke like, well, somebody would say, put your seatbelt on. I'm like, you're trying to stop me from going to see Jesus. But I mean, like the truth of the matter is, like, if we live like that, if we walked in faith like that, if we walked out our calling, our mission like that, where we're fearless, because what's the worst that you can do? Kill me and send me to the Father? Okay. Like, I mean, that, man, it's just
well,
like,
like reading through Acts, when we read through Acts when we were camping, the boldness that was highlighted, when Peter was talking there in Acts, and he was praying for boldness and asking for boldness, and like, I've said this several times on the show, probably, like, I'm not an extremely extroverted person. Like, if you're in my circle, like, I know who you are, dude, like, you can't get me to shut up. But I'm not always the person that wants to be the center of attention. I will always. It was funny, even because, like, there was times in our, like, campfire circles and stuff. Like, I just sat there and listened and just absorbed what everyone was talking about. I just sometimes have a hard time, like, putting myself into the spotlight at all. But sometimes, and I think that it's important that, especially for people like me, like, some boldness comes standard issue stock. With some people, like, they just don't care. Like, my dad's one that, ever since he had his awakening moment here about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, dude, you can't he'll put anybody on blast. He'll walk up to something and he'll, like, start off with, like, these crazy dad jokes that, like, Dad, that's not even funny. Like, oh, come on. Like, I know you're witnessing. I'm as soon as they, like, the person doesn't, like, run away screaming, like they actually start a conversation, I'm like, okay, I'll jump in there and we'll have a good conversation with this person. But sometimes it's like, whoa, how are you able to just put yourself into this situation? Because that is not me. But it's interesting that there was going to be a time that we need to be praying for boldness, because we need to be put into these situations that are so outside of our comfort zone, because that's where the Father's work needs to be done.
Yeah.
And it's comfort inside the boat, but just like Peter experienced in his life, this is some eisegesis, putting some stuff into the text probably, but I have a feeling that when Peter was talking about boldness, he was recalling when when Yeshua asked him to come out of the boat, step out on the waves, right? Where it's like, dude, that is so far outside of what I'm used to doing, what my comfort zone is. Like, I'm safe here. Like, I'm at least in the boat.
Well, I mean, yeah, you look at, I mean, Peter was a fisherman, right?
Yeah.
So he was very comfortable.
He knew his way is around a boat and around probably storms.
Yeah,
at that point, he's like,
at that point would have been like, I know that if I step out of this boat, that I'm going to sink to the bottom of the lake. You know?
That's something that he knew. Yeah.
Right. Hey, I got to give a shout out to Patricia. What's up, Patricia? In the chat. Patricia was one of our little buddies for Pentecost, for Shavuot. Yeah, Patricia, I see you in the chat. We just want to give you a shout out. I hope you had an amazing time like we did. If you did, throw it up in the chat and let everybody know, because we're planning on making that a more regular annual thing. So we'd like to hear what your thoughts on it were, Patricia.
And bring your citronella plant, because that thing was a hit.
Was awesome.
Bringing the all natural bug repellent is awesome.
Patricia's that person that brings the stuff that you didn't know you needed.
Exactly. Like we got to use her citronella plant. I owe you, Miss Patricia. I owe you a thing of chapstick, because man, my lips were chapped, and she had the remedy. So we definitely owe her a big thanks of gratitude.
Joy in the chat said, "Hey, it's Joy. Hey, it's good to see you in the chat." She said, "Nobody will be laughing through the tribulation." No, I absolutely agree. I don't think that's going to be a time. I think from a perspective of the world, they will probably be laughing there for the beginning part of it, laughing at what they're doing to us. But I think the true believers who are going to be in that time, we're going to be praying, for boldness, like we were just talking about.
It won't be something we take lightly. Yeah,
sure. I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure even in the hard times, like when we look at our patriarchs and the people who came before us, that they were under persecution from many different directions: Babylon, Rome, Greeks, the Arabic nations that were around them at the time. There was a lot of persecution. There was a lot of it was a dangerous life to live, and they still found time though to enjoy each other, enjoy fellowship, continue to get married, have kids, and there can be joy found in even the worst situations. So not to take it lightly, but it is an experience that I think every one of us will have to deal with, is to be in some form of tribulation in our lives. And the real struggle with it is to find peace and joy and comfort in the Father and what He's established for us, even in the worst of times.
Yeah, it's the only place we'll be able to find that peace, because no matter where we look in the world, we won't find it. No matter, regardless of, whether they pull out one of the, what was it, the movie 2012? Was it 2012 that they had like those giant arcs that they had created? Am I mixing up movies? There's like a end of the world movie where they had like 3 or 4 like these giant ship type.
That's been kind of like an ongoing sci-fi.
Probably, yeah. Whatever it was.
Which one it was, but yeah.
Or the people that say, "Hey, come to this safe, deep underground military bunker," DUMS for short. We've got room for 150,000 people can live down here for the next 3 years sustainably. Guess what? I have a feeling those are the people he's talking to that said they were trying to cover themselves with the rocks when stuff starts shaking. Cannibals. Absolutely, absolutely not.
I know it's down there. You ain't gonna get me down there. I've heard too many stories. Did you see the thing
I'm woke.
from Elon Musk about him trying to like like put together a ship and send like 1 million people to Mars or something like that? Like that's their process.
No, but I did see a video from like 1998. Some British TV show like had a fake like contest to um, send like eight UK residents to be the first ones, like commercial space travelers, and that for a week, and a half, they convinced them that they were in a rocket ship circling the Earth and then actually out in outer space. Eight whole people they convinced, and it was this whole reality TV show that they had out there. And I laughed. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's
Dude, the technology's there. Like I just watched. I guess it was just one of those shorts that comes up on Facebook, right? But
yeah,
it's Star Wars.
I think that's where I saw it too.
Well, this was like a little of the new like ride. I think it's called the Resistance, which is funny. That's
really?
What like kind of caught me. But it was the Resistance Star Wars ride in Anaheim, California, or whatever. And it has them going through like this ship, and then they've got the different characters, and they're all in this like transport with a little android droid in the front that's driving them through all this. And then it gets into a pod and it drops out of the ship and then flies through space, and everybody's like freaking out because to them it feels like it because the cameras, the way the screens are, they have the technology, man. Like literally would convince you that you were doing that. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it'd be a real quick way.
But this was like in the 90s. This was in the 90s too, and the reactions from some of these people, and it was kind of like I only saw like a short little preview of it, but it was like Big Brother-esque where they had like hidden cameras, and you hear people like, man, if you didn't tell me I was in space, I'd think I was like still somewhere east of London, blah blah blah. It turns out they were literally like 15 miles away at like a no, I'm dead serious. Yeah, like if you hadn't told me I was on Mars right now, like I would still think I'm like next door at my next door neighbor's apartment complex. Like they're like, I can't believe we're actually here, and it was comical from someone like us or most of the people listening to the chat that understands why the irony behind that. But
I just wonder what they would do. You know what I mean? Like just fly them around and then drop them in Iceland or something like that. Like,
look, that's exactly what they did. They said they were going from somewhere in the UK to the launch site that was in Russia. So they literally flew them around like the Bering Strait for not the Bering Strait, excuse me. One of the northernmost channels, and flew them around in circles at night for 16 hours, and then landed literally where they took off, and then took them on a helicopter 20 minutes away to this launch site. And I mean, it was the whole production thing, but it's one of those things that probably didn't age well for anybody who still who comes across it in 2022, because they're like, it would make them ask some questions like, they faked it that easy. I wonder what they could do on a 8-inch black and white TV back in the 50s.
Oh, man, right? Well, I mean, it just makes you think, if that were really the case, that he's going to try to put 1 million people on Mars, that's his plan. I mean, just think about it. You do a raffle or something. Think of how easy it would to be an elite, and then just be like, we're just going to tell them, we're going to send them somewhere else. You know what I mean? Make them do some recordings to send back to their family or whatever, and then oh no, the plant, the ship blew up there. I mean, how easy would it be just call 1 million people that way? Just oh, well, I don't know. We lost communication with Mars.
They must be 500 million some way.
Yeah,
according to the Georgia guys, though.
I don't know, man. It blows my mind though to think that just following because I've always been invested in following the psychology around aliens and this and watching people. I mean, when I studied War of the Worlds, right, when that first aired, a lot of people missed the introduction, and so when they heard it for the first time, they literally thought it was a news broadcast. And there were people, I mean, there were accounts from all across, the area that their suicide rate spiked because people thought they were being invaded by aliens. There was also a bunch of repairs that had to be done to the water towers that were in people's backyards because the water tower that had been there for 30 years, they went out in their backyard, saw the blinking light and the three legs, and thought it was one of the aliens and shot at it. This is what people did, right? But you go from the War of the Worlds, where people were terrified to the point where they were shooting water towers and committing suicide, to when we watched, was it Independence Day? And you got the guy at the top of the thing. He's like, take me, right? And then the beam comes down and just wipes everybody out. But that's the mindset that's changed. How the media has kind of twisted, like our view of things. Like where we would go if aliens came. We went from in the 20s, right? That people were terrified of it, to now if aliens come, people would bow down to them as like their saviors. You know what I'm saying? And it's just funny that how much the media has manipulated like our concepts of, and man, I got a tickle in my throat. Sorry, guys. That they've kind of conditioned us to like, we'll just trash the world. And then, when these alien saviors come, we'll be like, oh, they'll have all the answers. Like this sounds so familiar. Like I think I read it in Enoch.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting, especially how open that conversation has gotten here in what, the recent 2 or 3 years, how open that conversation has gotten. I watched the first 2 episodes of the X-Files. It's quite interesting, to see what they were putting on TV back then. Fast forward, I mean, that came out in what, 91 or 92?
Yeah.
Like fast forward 30 years and here we are. It's not a faux pas to talk about that anymore. It's something that's welcomed, and I think that's getting into my own personal opinions about some stuff, but we know there's a reason for that, regardless of whether they, there will be something alien coming down from the sky. I have a feeling instead of the saviors, they're going to be trying to get everyone to fight against it, right? Because if we read the book of Revelations, it seems like the whole world, whoever's left anyways at that point, tries to come against that, the thing and the person bringing that thing, and they're not too fond of him. So it really is interesting because how they're going to shift that, that narrative once again to, oh gosh, we realize they're not here to save us. We got this communication, or we sent 1 million people to Mars and they got there. We saw a video of aliens wiping them out. They're not friendly. They're coming this way. Like whatever happens,
I think that they've done a really good job, because we've had ingrained in the psyche of humans. There's a terminology for it that escapes me right at the moment. It's where, like, when we look at things like dolls or even mannequins, they have to make them where they don't look quite human, because if they look too close to human, we get weirded out by it.
Sure.
And they've done a really good job of conditioning us to kind of phase that out of us over the last couple of 100 years. There's still, things you can look at and you'll be like, man, that just, it's like the androids, like these robots that they build, and just the mannerisms and things that they do. It gives you the EBGBs, right? Like it just makes the hair stand like, that's too close to being real, but not, know?
Right.
Because I think, when the Watchers are finally exposed or come back and we deal with all these hordes and stuff like that, I do think it's going to look like a V scenario. Do you remember that show, V? It was like an alien show where like they park mile-wide spaceships over all the major cities in the world, and they end up being like reptilians.
I don't believe so. No,
it was, I think, originally like an '80s show, and then they did a remake of it not too long ago, a few years back. But I think that's the kind of scenario we're looking at. They're not going to be like terrestrial, they're not going to be celestial. They're terrestrial. They're already here. Like it tells us where they're at. They're already here. They're just going to have to disguise them to make them look, like us, or they're going to have to disguise themselves. There is that warning of saying, not to trust, the enemy, because even what does it say? Even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. What passages? I'll put that to the chat. Chat, do you guys remember where that's at? If you know where that's, where it talks about that Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. If you guys know where that's at, let's put it up in the chat. Everybody's talking about fireflies in the chat.
And it is interesting. I saw that they were talking about that, and my I almost said 10-year-old. She's 11 now. I tried to bargain with her to not turn 11. I tried to come up with an agreement where she would just stay 10, and she didn't buy it. So my 11-year-old, we went fishing the other night, and she saw a firefly, one, and I mean, it's June, like they're always out. Like ever since I was, a kid here in Indiana, they were out like from June all the way to like September. And we just haven't seen any. And she saw one, and she went chasing it into someone's yard and like in between their cars and stuff, like holding her fishing pole. And like, I love her to death. And I was like, babe, you just like drug your whole like tackle all down this person's car chasing the firefly. I'm like, did you catch it? She's like, I did. Okay. It's like, okay, this is at least worth it. Next time, keep an eye on where your hooks are and stuff. You're not like tearing up people's paint jobs. But she was so excited to see one. It was
Yeah, I got to see my first one yesterday for this season.
Really? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean they're out.
That used to be my aunt used to always give us the option. She's like, hey, we can stay here and catch fireflies, or we can go get ice cream. All my cousins were like, let's go get ice cream. I'm like, let's catch fireflies. And I was the only one, so I never got to stay and catch fireflies. We always had to go get ice cream every time I went to my aunt's house. But
I would much rather have fireflies than mosquitoes, because like you should see my 1-year-old right now. Like she goes outside and the mosquitoes just are like, she looks like she has the measles. Like she's been so bombarded by these things. I'm telling you, I think, there's that comic where it's like you have the devil like going to God and be like, hey, can I make one thing? And he's like, yeah. And then he makes like geese, right? I think he made mosquitoes. Those things are a nightmare. Like, I just want to walk around with a flamethrower and just, toast my air around the house. But
we got an answer to the trivia. The correct answer, 2 Corinthians 11:14, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed or can be disguised as an angel of light.
2 Corinthians.
Padre O'Hays.
Padre jumping in.
Yes.
What's going on, Padre? Good to have you in the chat. Thanks for dropping that in there, buddy. Appreciate it. So some people have not even seen fire. I guess that maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's just a territorial thing. Because like I grew up in the Midwest, so I've seen them every year for my entire life. So
there was another question. There was another question answered that I didn't even realize I had actually asked. She said Space Cadets was the name of the show I was talking about. I saw it. I think I saw a clip of it somewhere. I don't think I've ever actually seen Space Cadets, the whole show or movie or whatever it was, but yeah, it was definitely interesting.
Lightning bugs. Yeah, she said Hoosiers usually say lightning bugs. Yep, you were correct. We call them lightning bugs.
Hey, lightning bugs. They've always been lightning bugs to me. Yeah, well, and I you said something earlier. It made me want to reply. It had to do with the chat. I'll think of it. You guys keep posting stuff. Keep chit chatting in the chat, because that's more so than it's nice to like. We don't have a script for what me and Aaron are talking about. We were talking 5 minutes before the show, like, I wonder how tonight's going to go, because we don't have a specific direction we're going, and Aaron's comment was just, when we let the Holy Spirit lead, like, cool things happen. So the things that and for anybody who didn't catch the very beginning of the show, we were kind of talking about SITREP and how the situation report is actually gathered in the military. It comes from multiple different sources, different inputs of intelligence, different inputs of information that kind of get collected, and put into an easy to digest format for generals. They're not always the smartest. They want a lot of other people to do all the brain heavy lifting, and then they just make the hard decisions. Is kind of how it tends to play out. But that's cool because it's not all just dependent on what one person is witnessing. There's multiple witnesses to, hey, we can come to this conclusion because it's being witnessed by multiple people across the country, multiple people across this AO, the area of operations, and it's really interesting because every time we see, things get brought up in the chat, and it always tends to spark some type of conversation. Like it guides the show sometimes, and kind of like as we weave through the topics. I mean, we went from talking about Shavuot and Pentecost and all that stuff to like in 4 seconds we were talking about 1 million people on Mars. Like we can change gears on the show pretty quick without a whole lot of interruption. So
it doesn't take much to transition with us.
to keep up with us, sometimes it takes a special audience, and we really appreciate that, because when we get on here and we start just jabbing back and forth, that's me and Aaron's specialty. When we get going, man, it's just. I mean, oh my gosh, it's literally 10. Like, we're coming up on the break, and I thought we've been talking for like 15 minutes. So, because there's sometimes like during the show, I'm like, oh my god, we're only at 15 minutes. Like, how long is tonight gonna be? And then certain nights it's like, oh my gosh, like we gotta stop. Like we gotta go ahead and cut this off, or else we're literally gonna be going into tomorrow. So, it really is cool, and we appreciate you guys being here in the chat and chatting and bringing stuff up. And
I saw Ren 1010 just jumped in. Hey, welcome to the chat, Ren 1010.
Shalom.
Haven't seen them in here in a while.
Well, we missed what, last week, and then we didn't have one for. Did we have one right before?
I don't think we. I think we. So we've taken 2 weeks off. So yeah,
it felt like it had been a little while.
Well, yeah. I mean, Kelly said she thought we stopped. We stopped doing the shows. I'm like, no. I mean, I'll keep doing these. I mean, we'll let you guys know if that ever comes to a point where it's like I got to move on and do something else. But no, we're gonna keep doing them. The problem, and we'll come back and we'll talk about this a little bit, because I didn't want to do an exposed thing. So we're gonna talk about like some of the struggles of doing this and like with our families and with work and everything. So let's go to a break real quick, and we'll come right back, and we'll dive into that a little bit and talk about kind of what all we're experiencing on this side of the screen.
Yeah, we'll see you guys on the other side of the chat, or on the other side of the break anyways.
Yep, we'll see you guys here in just a few minutes.
Allow me to introduce you to what the world has been waiting for. I've come to herald the arrival of a generation with the capacity to see God's dream become man's reality. Oh, can you see it? We are the ones who refuse to blend in or fade out. We can't stay hidden in the church, and we won't stay silent in the streets. We value faith over fortune. We long for presence, not popularity. We'll take the kingdom over comfort, and we trust the gospel more than the government. There is something in our DNA that can't accept the status quo, business as usual, things as they are. We will never fit in the box marked normal. But you know what? We never really wanted to. We've watched our parents and peers give their lives to a cultural system designed for our destruction. So our minds have been made up. We are persuaded and convinced that the freedom Christ promised is the freedom Christ purchased with his blood on that cross. So that cycle of broken people breaking people, it ends with us. With suicide, depression, sexual dysfunction, and substance addiction beckoning and threatening the destiny inside us that cries to be realized, we say no to moral degeneration. We say no to a world that pretends that sin is no big issue, friend. Sin is the only big issue. We say no to the idea of just fitting in to this broken system. The time for change is now. Let the world choose its own path, but let them know that we are the resistance. game changers has passed. That generation is here if we'll see it. And our time is now if we'll take it.
All right, and we're back. Guys, thanks for hanging around on the chat here. I know the chat box is cleared out here, so we got to get that filled back up. We need more people. You guys still with us? Make sure you guys put in the chat that you're still here. I did see while we were on the break here, I had couple people posted some stuff here. Joy said, "Pee breaks allowed. Eat a sandwich, talk with your mouth full. It doesn't bother me." Let's see.
We should do a show where we just eat dinner on Zoom, dude, just like have like dinner conversation.
You know, that would probably do really well on our Twitch channel, because there's like ASMR videos all over the place. People just eating food and talking. I don't know about that. Into a mic like this. It's so weird. I don't know what's up with people, but let's see. I saw somebody else had a comment. Where was it at? Oh, yeah. Now I got that song stuck in my head. I love that video. Like, Ian put that one together, and that's one of my favorites that we've run as a commercial.
It reminds me of was a song by Casting Crowns called "Courageous." I probably talked about it on the show before. Anyways, it's what it reminds me of, like an anthem, like an anthem type war cry, like gets you hyped up to like do Kingdom War type beat.
All right, there we go. We got everybody's, and we got Tony join the chat. What's up, Tony? Glad to have you in here. We're just kind of chatting and talking about whatever tonight. Before the break, we kind of got brought up on the topic of, you know, what it's like on this side. And, you know, since we called this one Exposed, we might as well expose like kind of some of the things that we deal with on this side. I mean, it is hard. Like, so right now where I'm at, I'm working 6 days a week, pretty much like 3 weeks a month. So it's been pretty rough. And now the weather's getting into the point, like yesterday was 98 degrees, like, you know, without the humidity. I don't know what it was with the humidity, but it was awful. Like, I came home, all my clothes were drenched. You know, I was chafed in crazy places. Like, it was awful. You know,
need to wear you some linen,
right? Yeah, I wish, man. No,
take one of your AT&T patches and put it on a linen shirt. And just be like, oh no, this is official.
Dude, some of the shirts they give us are like these mixed blend, like synthetic, and it's awful. Like, it does not breathe.
It's like a furnace.
Oh, it's awful. And so, you know, dealing with that, and then, you know, I've got young ones around here. Being the summer, there's tons of projects that I'm trying to do with yard work and fixing the house up. Plus, they're trying to tear out my front yard and put a 5-lane road in my front yard. So, I mean, it's like one thing after another. And the you know, just like right before this, we did the show tonight. One of our ferrets started having real bad seizures and started barking. Like, I mean, it sounded like somebody was choking one of our baby chicks that we have in our, like, you know, our incubator thing. We thought one of the chicks was getting like dying or something. We ran there and realized that one of the ferrets, one of my wife's ferrets, was seizing. And at the last moment, like right before the show, I had to put it down. And I'm like trying to get all the stuff together to put the ferret down and everything. I'm like, oh man, it's always something. But it's rough because the enemy, you know, will try to throw everything at you like right before the show to the point where it's like, you know, I don't even want to do a show. But then when we do them, I feel great afterwards. I feel like I got some fellowship. I love the chat. I love having the conversations. And then there's just other times for me where it's like, I just don't feel led to do anything that day. Like, there's nothing. And I talked with Patricia about this, and he feels the same way. Sometimes it's like, that's why he kind of bumps around, and sometimes he just does a show like in the middle of the week or whatever. Yeah. Because he just feels led to talk about a topic. And there's other times when he's like, oh, I just don't feel like doing a show this week because there's nothing to talk about. So we always want to keep everybody engaged, but that's one of the reasons why Take on the World. If you guys haven't been to the channel, we've kind of revamped a little bit of the stuff on there, where now there's a section when you go to the channel that says daily shows. And there is currently right now, there are new shows, with the exception of Thursday, but I think we're kind of filling that in. There are new shows every night of the week going on right now. So Monday is Chad Schaefer's show, which is Disputed Lands. Tuesday is Sound Off with, I'm trying to think who's on the show. Usually a handful of people.
Chris,
but it's
Chris, Robbie Davidson, Doug, and one guy, I always forget his name. They have had.
Well, he was like a DJ for like a Christian radio station or something. I can't. It was Mike, I think, or something like that. Maybe. Pardon me if that's not what your name is. I apologize. So Tuesdays is Sound Off. Wednesdays is our show. Thursdays was Flat Out Insights. That's kind of a floater day right now. Yeah. Because whenever somebody's not doing something, if they can't do it on Tuesday, they'll do it on Thursday. But Flat Out Insights, when they put their shows up, they're doing it on Thursdays. Friday is currently the Roundtable, so it's I can see the acronym.
CCMC.
Yeah. So the Roundtable's on Fridays now. Saturday is Fiducia's show, Draw Night of the Creator, and Sunday is The Way Remnant. So there should be something going on. That's what we're really trying to draw, because YouTube's not going to help us out. I mean, we're a Christian, channel with a bunch of guys that believe in flat Earth, so they're not going to. So the best thing that we can do is to give you guys content on a regular basis, so that you keep coming back to the channel. And so that's what we're really trying to do. And we're working with a couple of other guys there's going to be more content as we keep going. So we're really hoping to push that forward. So if we miss a day, I mean, it's not like the end of the world or anything.
Yeah. And on that note, that, it's interesting though, because, I know from personal experience, I don't have the ability to watch YouTube every night of the week. Like, my wife's pregnant with number 4, and anybody else that's got kids running around or stuff to do and houses to run and families to raise and all of that stuff, especially for people that are doing their best to walk out this walk and understand the priorities of, do I sit on YouTube for 8 hours filling my head with a whole bunch of other opinions on another man's opinions on stuff, or do I put some of what I already do know into action and can start raising my family and start doing kingdom stuff? And sometimes that means you don't have tons of time to just sit down and absorb, and don't get me wrong, there's tons of good material out there to listen to. I love when I get to catch a show. I was pleasantly surprised I got to catch Uncommon Ground on an early show today. Like, I was listening to that in the van on the way to dinner. It was super cool, because I love getting to watch that show, but it's normally on the same time slot that we're doing our show. So it's like, normally I'll get if I can get up early enough, I'll catch the morning after replay or something like that. If I don't, then it's normally I have to wait till Saturday afternoon when everyone else is taking a nap to catch a few shows that I wasn't able to catch. I'll have to watch it on 2 times speed so I can get through the entire thing before everyone wakes up and gotta change diapers and make dinner and all this stuff. But
got Chad Schaefer. Speaking of
Schaefer,
that guy, that DL Disputed Lands guy.
Well, I'm glad he wasn't here for the beginning of the show when we were really ragging on him. Just kidding, Chad. We love you, brother. We need to.
But yeah, you touched on another issue. So, this is just kind of one of those points that we want to bang home. Is a lot of the stuff we talk about on the show is something that we're dealing with. You just touched on the fact, I don't know if you've said it on the show yet or not, but that your wife is pregnant again.
Yes.
And which your newest Malik he just turned 6 months, but he was 3 months preemie. I mean, that's really close. And then you've got doctors and all kinds of stuff. They're telling you this is dangerous and all this other kind of stuff. You're getting bombarded all the time with the fear. And you touched on a point about men on this Sukkot or this Shavuot but I saw the women
absolutely
coming together. I think it's fellowship across the board, because a lot of times, young moms, my wife, she deals with a lot of things and she feels like she's the only one that's dealing with it. But then she talks to your wife or she talks to other moms and realizes, you know, that
They
they
both
all
talk to Cindy, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you went through this already? Like you've done this already? Like, and now you can just sit here, and give wisdom, sound biblical advice as you're going through some of this stuff for some of the young. Yeah, it was
yeah, you got like
absolutely
the
beautiful
Windsors.
just to
They
sit
got
there.
they had like what are they, 6 kids, 5 kids,
Six,
something
yeah,
like
I think they've got 6. Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Lots of
yeah.
experience there. And
Yeah,
not to mention
exactly.
those guys, man, those are the Windsors and Sampson's family. Man, they
The
come
Williams, yeah.
prepared. They had like yurts and I mean everything. Like it was
Like I thought I was prepared when it came to camping. Like I know I'm more of a primitive style camper. Like when it comes to like just like if it was just me, like man, I don't even need a tent. like give me a canvas. Like if it's raining, give me a canvas and put it up a ridge line between 2 trees, and I'm happy. But it was really cool. Like. And it's a completely different dynamic when you go family camping and you're having to not just be comfortable yourself, but like try and like Sarah, Jason's wife, she's 28 weeks pregnant. And so trying to make sure all the pregnant women stay comfortable and are able to still enjoy their time and their fellowship. And so it's just this really cool group dynamic of when we were tearing down, my little one, he was just having a rough morning, and it warmed my heart so much to see some of the other moms come over and help keep an eye on him while we were trying to get some stuff packed up that Monday morning, and let my wife have like a few seconds to like gather a few random stuff that she's like trying to make sure it didn't get lost and stuff, and so it's just really cool, and at that same time they were still having conversation and continuing their conversations from the previous night and stuff. It was just really, it was a real blessing to see that, for sure, and not just the conversations I got into, but like you said, hearing those conversations and just kind of sitting back and listening to other people's conversations and hearing them get to share testimony, with one another.
There's another one that just popped in. We got
look at that, Jason Windsor.
Jason just popped in.
Oh my gosh!
I wish it was that easy. If we just said everybody's name at the beginning of the show, that everybody would come into the chat.
Yeah. That's what we're gonna start doing. We'll do a prayer list where we start praying for individual people, and then we'll see if they just come through the show later on.
Were your ears burning?
Yeah. Yeah. Good to see you, Jason.
Yeah, Jason. When Jason, we had Patricia in the chat earlier. If you had I know you had a blast. Throw something in the chat that you enjoyed from our Pentecost Shavuot get together, so that people in the chat can get to experience a little bit of that. I was going to put together a little slideshow of everything, but I didn't want to put people's kids up on the internet and stuff like that. I didn't want to have to do a little bar across my
blurred. Just everyone's picture, but everyone's face is blurred out.
Yeah. Just pictures of me. It's just pictures of me like asleep in the tent. Did you see that picture where
I did? Yes.
When my youngest fell asleep on me and I couldn't move. I was laying in the tent, and every time I'd move, she'd wake back up. So I was trying to give her mom a break. And so I just said, I'm just falling asleep too. And I wake up and everybody's gone. Everybody went to the lake and stuff. I was like, all right, well, whatever.
Yeah. I guarantee what Jason puts in here is his favorite thing is shooting his airsoft gun at raccoons at 3 a.m. Guarantee that was his favorite part. Guarantee it.
I'm not going to lie. Those were like mini bears. Those things were, when I shined that light in,
they were
like 3 of them looking back at me. They were like, Toby size. I was like, oh, you guys can have whatever you want.
Yeah. It was definitely a good time. No, it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I kind of talked a little bit about, some of the things that I face, when getting to do the show, because it is a lot. I have to put the graphics together, getting the show prepped. I have to make sure my computer's updated or it becomes just a nightmare right before I do the show. So there's a lot of things that I deal with. And even on top of that, like I got to keep up with the TikTok page and stuff like that. I stopped uploading videos. There's a ton of stuff that I have to do. And I still have about 30 videos from Take on the World last year that are still on my docket, and I just don't have time for it. Because I'm working 6 days, and until I get over to this training position, I don't have any time. And any time that I do, there's a bucket list, of things that, the wife honey-do list around the house that needs done. So, but give some of the things that you've been dealing with, hindrances and things that can cause us. Because this is just going to lead me on to another point. But go ahead and
Yeah. No, I mean it's it. I'm a very internal thinker. Like there's a lot of stuff that I internalize and try to like work through before, it sees action or it sees like resolution. And so and that is I feel like sometimes both a blessing and a curse, because it helps me be extremely self-reflective, but at the same time it sometimes really if I'm not careful, I really start listening to the voice from the enemy that tries to accuse, right? That tries to bring stuff up from the past, tries to give hints that, hey, you're not worthy to have a platform to be able to speak encouragement and edification into someone else's life because of X, Y, or Z, right? And so, like you said, sometimes it's not just the time factor. It's the the cares of the world sometimes that try to get in the way, and it always seems to pop up on Wednesdays, like and it's like you can have a really solid week, like from Thursday to Tuesday. Like, man, like I'm just super on it in whatever, frame of reference you're looking at that. And, having a really good joyful week, and you're not dealing with any depression. You're not dealing with any temptations. You're not doing it. And then Wednesday comes around and it's like the world wants to fall apart. Sometimes it's only in here. And it's just the days that I realize that, are the cool ones, because I get to literally go into combat against those thoughts and really practice taking those thoughts captive, right? But then there's sometimes where it's just like all the other stuff that was happening Thursday to Tuesday start adding up, and then Wednesday comes around and it's like the straw that broke the camel's back, and then it's just you're dealing with like depression and all these things, and just an onslaught of personal frustrations, whether it be stuff around the house, like an annoyance this, annoyance that, or someone's upset about this, or something comes up, or something needs to be done that should have been done yesterday. It just whatever you put in X, Y, or Z here, and it tries to derail. I think sometimes the best videos that we've had, that some of the best conversations that we've had, I'm not talking about viewership. I'm not talking about, this many people like the video. I don't even look at that. I don't care less about that. I'm talking about like when I know at midnight 30, when we finish the show, that I feel so energized and recharged and on fire and absolutely have my zeal from year one of my journey, that zeal, go back to your first love type of zeal. When I feel that at midnight 30, I don't want to go to sleep. I just want to like go in the cul-de-sac and start screaming, and preach to all the people who I know whose windows are open. Those are the nights that were the worst Wednesdays. Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing. In hindsight, it's sometimes a really tough struggle to go through that Wednesday, but it's a really beautiful thing, because it's like those are the times when that the Father really wanted to speak something through you, not necessarily to someone else, but maybe it was just to you. Like he just needed you to be willing and be obedient. Sometimes it's inconvenient, but needed you to be obedient to set your mind on him and to trust in him and to focus on him and let everything else just slide away. So for me, I'm blessed. I'm blessed absolutely beyond measure to have a job where I get to work from home now. It's the first time I've ever done that in my life, but blessed to have a job where I can work from home, where I don't have to spend an extra, hour or two in traffic, to or from work, which is less time that I get with my family. Like I can walk out of my office and go straight into being dad, that part I'm blessed to. And sometimes the struggle for me is that like sometimes I need time to just, I think in Take on the World, you first introduced the nothing box. Sometimes that I need a little bit of time just to like, I can't focus on anything else. I need just a little bit of decompression. Sometimes the nothing box tries to take precedent over other things that I know are higher on the priority list. And so it's a struggle for me. And like I said, there's times when I know that, I'm on point and I'm doing good. And then there's other times where I'm just like, man, get so distracted and so sidetracked where it's like, if you ever, I have a YouTube channel. I've got one subscriber. I don't know who it is. It's not me. It's not my wife. But I've got one subscriber, Discipleship Dialogues. And sometimes like, you ever like find yourself just like listening, letting the algorithm tell you what to watch next, and then like I see like the stuff that then like if you go to like my recent watch videos, like sometimes it's on autoplay, sometimes it's just like, hey, what's next? I'd be like, I would not want to expose this to, like if I were to open up my YouTube on the show and just like go through my search history, like would it be edifying to everybody and like, hey, like that looks like a follower of Christ, that looks like someone who's actively trying to live out his faith, or does that look like someone who is kind of getting distracted in the grand scheme of things? And so that's one thing that it was a really big thing, like as we're talking about this expose, like SITREP exposed, that should be a really good reminder for me and for all of us, like the things that no one else can see, but we can see. Like if you can't openly expose that and be willing to hear the criticism or the encouragement or whatever that looks like, from seeing like your YouTube watch history or something like that. It's I don't know. It's just a really good reminder for us to be cognizant and be aware of what we're ingesting, because you are what you eat. You that stuff does affect it. And I can, if I'm honest with myself, the days that I have rough Wednesdays is because I wasn't as tight and with keeping the world out Tuesday or Thursday through Tuesday, right? And there's a lot of people who struggle with like Shabbat, for example, where they want to focus so heavily on the Father and all his stuff. Like Shabbat is their day where they struggle. Shabbat is like, for me, it's Wednesdays. Like Shabbat is a good day for me, and it's a super special day, obviously. But Wednesdays is the days where it's like, as I'm preparing to not be a hypocrite as I come on here and not be a double forked tongue, guy that's just saying all the stuff of what everyone else should be doing when, I won't even like show you my YouTube history, that's just a good reminder. And so I think, for me, as if we were to truly expose our lives and someone really got to see all the behind the scenes, like what would that really look like? And so we need to be staying on top of that and keeping the world and its influences, to a minimum, so we can be better lights and we can be a better reflection of Yeshua.
Yeah.
So
Man,
I'll jump off my.
Oh, you're fine. I'm in the same boat with like YouTube and stuff. I love documentaries. Like the more things that like I can have this understanding of, the broader. It's just how my brain works, right? I want bits and pieces from everything. So like over the last week, I think I watched a documentary on the most dirtiest place, the most dangerous place or dirtiest place was in like South Africa, where they burn plastics and stuff like that to get copper out of it and everything. Is like has the worst life, like they said, like 38 or something like that was life expectancy there before you get cancer and stuff. It's crazy. So I watched that. I watched a whole 3-part series, I think it was on Netflix, about the FLDS church, the Mormons, like the polygamist Mormons, and like the guy who founded that and his son who ended up taking over and getting child brides and all this other stuff. I watched that, and then I think one of the other ones, the one I fell asleep the other night listening to it, was the history of Patient Zero. the AIDS epidemic. And I mean, yeah, sometimes I just listen to stuff and then I'm like, passed out. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, because I mean, none of that. I mean, yeah, it's knowledge, but again, is it glorifying to the kingdom? Is it benefit? I don't
Exactly.
know. I mean, there's a lot of things that God has shown me over the years that, you know, like working in the bar industry, you know, like doing some of the stuff. There's a lot of things that we may think is coincidental. But there are times when there are things that we are learning. It's like a training. It's like going through boot camp. I can't imagine the overall, like if I could look at this, the spectrum of my life like God could and see all the times when I was like, man, that was a terrible experience, or, you know, I should have been doing the X, Y, or Z, but he was using those times, you know, just much like the story of, was it Nineveh and Jonah, right? Like, God knew that Jonah wasn't going to be obedient. Right? He knew. He went and told him. He's like, you go do this. And he's like, no, I'm going to run away. You know? But in that moment, though, I like to look at it like Jonah, if he would have been obedient, all those people on the boat wouldn't have worshipped the creator of all things. They built an altar to him because of what they experienced. Had Jonah been obedient in that moment, God just knew Jonah. He knew that he didn't like Nineveh. He knew what he was going to do, but he used him anyways for his glory. And I feel like there's a lot of times, you know, we might look at things that the enemy uses and pokes at us and says, you shouldn't do this. You're not good enough. You're whatever. But then there are times that God's like, I had to use you in that instance. I knew that in your disobedience, it was going to cause you to falter and you were going to go through this cycle and you were going to learn from it. So that's the one thing I really love about our creator is that he creates everything down to the microscopic, but then he's so personal that in you and I's life that he's intricately woven, knowing even our personalities and what our likes and dislikes and what we're our potential for what we were going to do or not, but he still uses it for his glory. And I think it's beautiful, and the tapestry of our lives being woven together by the creator, even on the minute things, all the way into the things when we're disobedient. I don't know.
Speaking of a tapestry, like I watched a documentary of like how some like the absolutely beautiful like the Moroccan tapestries are made, and like how they've been made since like, you know, the beginning of time. And how well that analogy actually fits, because it's such a paying attention to every detail type process, and you know where every thread's supposed to go to create this beautiful design that you cannot see that design until it's complete, you know. And so like our lives, even though it's, you know, compared to eternity is like a little you know, blip in the scheme of things, there's going to be a time where the Father's already seen it from that perspective of this beautifully created tapestry that he's put together, and how our tapestry is actually woven into who knows how many other tapestries, you know. Right. and an even bigger picture. And so it's just like mind-blowing how beautiful it will be, you know, seeing it from that perspective, because that's we sometimes forget that that's how the Father sees us. He sees us through the Son's righteousness, not our own, you know. And when it comes to that point, like he's not going to be shining the spotlight on all the times that we screwed up. It's pointing how much our obedience actually tied us into all those people around us, and how this community, this body, was actually knit together and grown. Not just bam, it's there, it's perfect, it's done. There's a bunch of robot Christians that do everything perfectly, but it's this growth process, you know, that there's beauty in some of the only way that you could have the whole big beautiful picture is because there's some mistakes in there, you know, and that there's those lessons that we had to live through and learn from, to be able to then go on and do better ourselves, and then be able to encourage and edify someone else who's dealing with some of those things. I mean, it's literally like discipleship in a nutshell, in a picture, you know, picture analogy. So really beautiful, you know, and a really good point, because I think it's important that we sometimes take a second and look at it from a different perspective than the oh my gosh, all my Torah friends are gonna see that I drink a certain brand of of wine, and turns out that wine is actually has some processing done to it that uses like unclean food or whatever. Which is a very specific example because it's like that happened, and it's like, oh my gosh, like what? I mean, sometimes we get really focused on that kind of the parts of our walk when it's just like, dude, like that's not what we should be focused on. That's not. We're supposed to learn from our those things that we get to endure, and those tribulations, those trials that we get to come through and end up being stronger on the other side of them, and hopefully more dependent on the Father and His Son. And so, I don't know, man. It's just.
I think we see a mirrored example of that in the disciples. I mean, you got to talk about a ragtag group of guys, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a tax collector, you're talking about a former prostitute, you're talking about, some fishermen,
roughneck crew.
Right,
yeah.
right. That's like I mean, and then even when they wrote the Gospels and they talk about like just. That's one of the, I don't know if I've said this on the show before, but I know I said it at Sukkot. But one of the reasons why I love the Gospels and believe the Gospels is if you're going to write a document about yourself, most writers will try to paint themselves in a positive light.
Yeah.
Right. And these guys are writing about themselves going, Jesus called me Satan.
Right.
Right. He was telling us this really important thing. And then we were like arguing about, was he mad or because we got the bread thing wrong? Like,
right.
I mean, they just didn't
right.
paint themselves in the best light because they just didn't get it while he was walking around with them. They couldn't see the bigger picture. But then when he his death, burial, and resurrection, he came back. Man, the whole perspective changed. When you look at Acts after the Gospels, when you look at how they shifted, it was no longer like there
was a maturing that had happened.
Right. They got it, and there was just a whole shift and the growth where you were actually starting. He was watering it, he was nurturing it, and then you started seeing fruit in Acts. You know what I mean? Like that's where we're at in this process. All of us are. I haven't met anybody yet. And I think it's through God's grace. I think at the point when you've signed that contract with God and He gets you to that point, He takes you home. I think that's why we've lost a lot of influential, very amazing preachers and pastors and teachers in my lifetime, is because, that God got them where He needed them. And they did the work that they needed to do. And sometimes in death, your work is greater than in life. I mean, all the disciples were martyred, right? Except for, what was it, Paul, right? We don't know where he died at. But, I mean, I think it's a beautiful concept of the tapestry. And just like, I think it's one of those things it's not like you're going to stand in front of the spotlight, on judgment. He's going to show you the greater tapestry of what your obedience meant to the bigger picture, as he's weaving that bridal dress, the decorations of the new bride or whatever.
For sure.
But man, I was seeing everybody was talking about chickens in the chat. My wife is trying to convince me to spend $400 on a automatic chicken plucker. If you guys haven't seen one of those, you can get them at Lowe's. You hook a hose up to it and it does this with the chicken and all the feathers come flying off. So that's a thing. So you don't have to do it by hand. Just get an automatic chicken plucker.
That's what you saw. I saw literally Ian from D&G Ministries jumped in the chat. So I think there's something too. We start talking about people on here. Mm-hmm. They're gonna jump in. They're gonna come. And so we need to start talking about them at the beginning of the show.
Right.
So we can get a few more people to
hold on. Let me
come and hang out with us.
Of all the people that are normally in our chat, and we're gonna have everybody sign in. Becky, are you here? Ren 1010, are you here?
No, it's Aaron.
I need.
You mean Aaron?
Dookie, are you here?
Dookie.
Just mispronounce everybody's.
Or no, here's one. If Miss Marsha's still here, she'll think this is funny. Marcia. Where's Marcia?
Well, it was my
Did you
fault.
see earlier? She
Yeah,
corrected you, and I was like, I was laughing so hard because I was like, I know good and well he knows who it was. He just didn't. He didn't
I
realize.
just skimmed over it. I saw
Oh
the
my
picture,
goodness.
but I don't know what I said. You know, I had that
Yeah.
disconnect between what my
You
eyes
said
see and what my-
Marcia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is that not how it's spelled? Marcia.
Oh, it's so funny. Good stuff.
Jason Windsor says you can make a chicken plucker out of an old dryer. I could probably kick it around my yard and pluck it too. Like, I'm just saying.
Oh my god. Yes. You guys just have to realize, everyone in the chat, Aaron is a city boy dealing with having a wife that wants to be the homesteading champion, and he is getting drug head first, like dreads first, through this whole thing of learning how to be a not so much city boy.
Yeah.
And so
well, yeah, because it works out like this. She's like, "Hey, I want to get goats," and I'm like, "Okay, no." And then she's like, "No, we're gonna get goats," and I'm like, "You understand what that? I got to build a shelter. I have to put a fence up. I got to do this." She's like, "How about bees?" No. I'm gonna get this tree and this tree. That means I have to dig holes. What? Stop giving me more work.
Oh my gosh! Yes, it's a beautiful thing.
Vader. Oh, Vader put something about the Mormons earlier. He said that they think that believe that Yeshua and the evil one are brothers. Yeah, I saw that. And they also in their literature believe that once you ascend, if you get 3 wives, and you have a bunch of kids or whatever, you get your own planet, which like totally goes against the biblical cosmology model. Like they like have this whole belief that you get your own planet and galaxy to basically be a god over. It's this whole like Gnostic ascension model that you will become gods too. It's all over occultic. Any cult that always is some kind
that's already existing in gaming. Like you can be the admin of your own server, you can control everything, every aspect of it, and people can come to your place and they have to abide by your rules. they're already prepping the at least most of the young boys these days for that whole concept.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all as the Father is trying to do things, of course the enemy is. It's coincided. Yeah. The things that we think we point out and know are usually the things we don't know. It's usually the underlying stuff that we're not paying attention to. It's the whole smoke and mirrors thing. That's the part that's dangerous. That's why I'm so adamant about the truther community, because I've been one since pre 9/11, and I've seen where so many people get distracted by what they show you on the surface and make visible to you, but you miss all of this. And then the number one thing is the time wasted. The time wasted on thinking you're tracking down the QAnon thing was huge. When I still love it. That's one of the only videos that are missing from our files, is because we were like QAnon. We had a video called QAnon Friend or Foe, and it got pulled right off of YouTube. And we basically called out what Q was, and they because it had it in the title, it got pulled. But it was a big waste of time. Like it just got you chasing your tail, and you what was it? Trust the plan. Well, whose plan? Who's directing it? Like, trust in what? Like it was just a bunch of verbs, just do something, but don't do anything. Like, and it was, I see this all the time. They show you these things and get you worried and fear, and that's the other one. I mean, we had that. Was it fear something and fear video, and that's basically what we talked about. Is just the system is set up to subconsciously just bombard you with images of chaos and violence and end of the world scenarios, just to get you your immediate reaction to be your knee-jerk reaction, your flesh reaction, to be terrified, to be fearful. These are the anti. We had that show where we covered over the fruits of the Spirit and the anti-fruits of the Spirit, and that's what they build in you. They build bad fruit, not trusting in God, being fearful, all these things. And what does the Bible say? What is it? It was in that Matthew text that we read at Pentecost. I keep saying Passover. At Pentecost, at Shavuot, it says a good tree does not bear bad fruit, and a bad tree does not bear good fruit. We're fruit inspectors, guys. We're supposed to be keeping each other in check. and supposed to be inspecting each other's fruit. Now, most people like think inspecting other people's fruit is more abrasive and looks like the watchman on the wall, the shooting arrows at people. But when you're a fruit inspector, you're gentle. You don't want to damage or bruise the fruit, right? You want to inspect fruit. And, when you
because while you're inspecting it, if it's good, you haven't determined whether it's good fruit or bad fruit. If it's good fruit and you damaged it, guess what it becomes? Bad fruit. You start creating that cycle of hurt people, and it's just, and it plays into, what we've seen church hurt and toward terrorism and all those things where it's like, okay, the whole fruit inspectors part, Aaron, I think you agree that part is actually hey, inspect my fruit, open up my chest and expose the things that I'm dealing with and struggling with. And because I'm exposing it to this group of brothers and sisters and others in the walk, that it's not so much that it's like someone's like tearing into me without my permission. It's a, hey, I have to humble myself to open this up so you can see it and help give wisdom and guidance and encouragement and correction, rebuke in some cases when the fruit doesn't match up with what I say I believe, and so I think that's a big part of it that goes like you said, kind of overboard with sometimes people in this community, sometimes in the Christian community, like some of the world, like it's a worldwide, problem. I would say global. I think that would be a trigger word for some people. But that there has to be that humility to be able to say, hey, this is the fruit that I have, and and be able to, sometimes let your own fruit be inspected before you start inspecting others. It goes back to the whole, log in your eye and trying to pick a splinter out of your buddy's eye.
I think it's that same thing where we were talking about. How do they teach you to find, fake $20 and $50 bills?
Sure.
They train you what the real looks like, and then you're able to decipher what the fake looks like. How are you going to understand the difference between fruits if you don't, have some of those fruits yourself? If you can't recognize those fruits,
if you're not well versed in the good fruits,
right?
Yeah.
Because you go when I go to the apple orchard. They're apples to me, but they have them in rows of, these are a certain type of apples. These are yellow, delicious. These are, whatever, they're apples to me. Right. But if I was cultivating apples, if I was growing my own apples, if I understood the fruit, which I just bought an apple tree. Thanks, Rachel. Love you. But if I was I would know what my type of apples are. Right. I would recognize those when I go to the apple orchard again, right? I'm gonna say, hey, these are the same type of apples we have in our backyard. Same thing with, exactly. That's how fruit inspection is supposed to work. You should demonstrate the fruit before you can see it in other people. If you do it the opposite way, it's what Jesus says. How dare you try to help somebody else remove a speck from their own eye when you have a log sticking out of your own eye? You can't. You're just going to be smacking him in the head with the log, right? You can't get close enough to actually help that person, and you only recognize it because it's made out of the same wood of the thing that's sticking out of your own eye.
Yeah. And that same analogy is like if you do it backwards, you see all the rotten fruit in the apple orchard, then you come back, your tree's dead. It doesn't even have bad fruit. It's just you got a dead tree. And it seems to be, in my case, that's how it was. Like, man, I could see everything wrong with the entire world. I come back, I'm like, who am I to say anything? I've got nothing to say. Because there's not just bad fruit. Like, I don't know. No one take this too seriously, but I don't know whether it's better to have bad fruit or no fruit. I wonder what that theologically accurate, statement on that would be. But it's definitely interesting because it's an easy trap to fall into. Because I know I've been there. I know a lot of people who have, and like we said earlier, and I think what the whole crux of this conversation leads to is that at some point there's a maturing that happens, right? Because guess what? Young, brand new brand new fruit sometimes doesn't taste that great.
Right.
Like when it's not ripe, like it does not taste good. So depending on your perception, like if it doesn't taste good, that's bad fruit. Like that's not something that you're going to want to be ingesting. And so sometimes you can be 100% right, and you have a lot of potential to grow into, awesome kingdom lady or guy, whatever the case may be. But sometimes that fruit, it still needs to mature a little bit before it can be received by anybody else around you. You still have lots of potential, and you're on your way. But sometimes we have to let that maturing happen first before we, go out there and start comparing ourselves to all the other fruit in the world. Interesting side note about fruit. Raspberries aren't even berries. You know what one of the most popular fruits that's actually a berry that's not called a berry?
Mm-mm. No, I mean,
a banana.
Oh yeah.
A banana is a berry. Blew my mind.
Well, it's like tomatoes
are
are fruit. I mean, yeah, their classifications are yeah, we got it all kinds of messed up.
Anyways,
Ducky was in the chat and said, what do you say? Better hot nor cold, so no fruit would be worse. I remember somebody, and it may have been Ducky. I can't remember having a conversation talking about the breakdown of hot and cold. And I remember a previous conversation I had with somebody who had studied it out and read the words for what it represents and the biblical understanding. So cold water it's commanded to give somebody a refreshing cold, glass of water, right? When somebody comes to you and needs a glass of water, it says give them cold water. So there's a purpose for cold water, right? It's refreshing, it's rehydrating, that kind of stuff. The hot water is used for cooking, for boiling and stuff. It was the stagnant water is where disease, bugs, mosquitoes, it's that where it's just was stagnant, I think was more of a term where it's not really that it's hot nor cold. It's that you are stagnant, lukewarm,
there's no movement to it, no life.
Right. And so there's nothing there. There's no purpose is really what I gathered from it. It was there was reason for hot and there was reason for cold, but the stagnant, just think of like, the bucket of water that's been sitting in your backyard and it's got bugs in it.
Dude, I just dumped one the other day. It was not fun. It was not fun. Yeah. Anyways, it's a really good point, and it's interesting because there's so many good applications for hot water, right? I mean, we could sit here and list off a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like anybody who's ever experienced getting in some cold water, and like at Shavuot when we went to the waterfall, that stream was like super nice and clean, and the water was so cold, and dude, it felt so good to get down in there because cold water like recharges you, it supercharges your immune system, and it just has so many good benefits to it, like getting in cold running water, like it's really good for you. And so there, like you said, to that point, if it's stagnant water that's not moving, there's no point to it. Stuff starts growing in there and starts taking that over, and it becomes something that you don't want to drink. But guess what? I'll drink hot water because if it's been boiled, it's been purified, it's clean, it's good to go. I'll drink cold water, anytime when it's in Indiana, it's 98 degrees, like cold water is a good thing. But you won't see me like reaching for that. I don't even want to know what was in that bucket. I don't want to know.
I run across people's yards all the time, and they have like spare tires. And just in that bottom of the tire has got like a layer of slimy water, and that's where all the mosquitoes come from. I'm stuck on the mosquito thing because they got me good the last couple of days. So
yeah, I saw you itching there for a minute.
yeah, dude, I've got bites all over me, man. My daughter looks even worse. I mean, she's like I said, she looks like a little, she's white because she's 1 year old, barely seen the sun, and she has these spots all over her face and arms and body where she just got mauled to death by stinking mosquitoes.
Yep.
What's everybody talking about in the chat now? I see
tomatoes, berries,
potatoes.
Sean Hawkins looks like he's a shill, or NASA's a shill. Stagnant water.
Are you insulting?
No. I'm talking before I analyze.
He said something about stagnant water can't be cold. I'm just saying. I'm sure it can, but I think the concept that they were trying to relay. I mean, everything has dual meanings to it. There's a purpose, and it was something that they're relatable to. Stagnant water would not be like they didn't wash they were commanded to wash their hands in running water. So stagnant water is what the Romans would wash their hands in. They would have communal hand washing. This is why disease and germs were spread. So stagnant water, that was what I got from the thing about the lukewarm, was that they were saying it was because it didn't have a purpose. So that was really what it was about. It wasn't really the fact that it was stagnant. It was what can happen when you have room temperature stagnant water that sits there and does nothing. Nothing good happens. Right? It just gets moldy. It gets gross.
All the bacteria from all the people's hands that they were washing in that bowl then gets to continue breeding. Yeah.
Hey, look, Sean jumped in the chat. What's going on, Sean?
Brother? I told Wes earlier it was super cool to catch an early edition of UC Uncommon Ground. It was a super big blessing to be able to listen to it driving to. We went out for some food earlier, and so I was like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. I actually get to listen to the live version for once, since we're always on when you guys are doing it on Wednesday night. So glad to see you, brother.
Oh, man. Yeah. And we said Sean's name earlier, and then he popped in. See, it's just a thing.
Totally. It's happening. It's real.
Sean said the Romans invented running water. Well, I think the island of Crete disagrees with that. They had piping that predates the Roman Empire. So I think it's actually a pre-flood invention. I mean, it's not hard to put tubes and run water through it. But yeah, historically speaking, the way that the school teaches you is that Rome made aqueduct systems. But I'm talking running water as in you were baptized and cleansed in running, moving rivers. Because, I mean, you can go to India and you can see where people poop downstream or upstream from you, and you go and wash your hands in the water. If everybody was pooping in the same stagnant pool, it wouldn't have the same effect. It would be drastically different. Running water is the way people are baptized and cleansed and cleaned and drink water. The Pool of Shalom, when you look at the Jordan River, it's where everybody was baptized at. Those were all large bodies of water or small bodies of water that had constant movement in the water. So kept it cleaner for consumption and cleanliness.
It's the river of life, not the 55-gallon barrel drum of life, full of life water.
Yeah, Sean brings up he said that comes within the floodgates of the firmament. Yeah.
They were just copying the original when they're like, hey, we take water from up here and we run it down these pipes. and the original valves, like ball joint valves were actually just the windows of heaven, right?
Let me just say, so baptism in a baptismal in church isn't valid. I didn't say anything about validity of it. I'm saying whether it was commanded of the Hebrew people and ritual cleansing for temple. It's the people who are getting baptized in Pentecostal churches aren't walking into the Holy of Holies that will strike you dead if you walked into it. So they were a little bit more serious about it than just getting dunked into the water. It was literally a cleansing ritual that had very specific rites. Because if they didn't do it correctly, you walked past the Holy of Holies, you would drop dead. They actually tied a rope to the high priest when he walked into there, because if he didn't do the one thing right when he walked into the Holy of Holies, he would drop dead, and they couldn't go in to get him. Only one person was allowed to enter in the Holy of Holies, so they would have to pull him back out. So they were very, very careful on how they did the rituals that were set up for sacrifice and practices of the temple.
Well, it's interesting though, the point of baptism getting brought up though, because we have to understand that like that's not us being born again in its fullness. It's something that points towards that in the resurrection, right? That's something that happens at the resurrection, and it's like a public declaration of, hey, I know that the resurrection is when I'm born again, and that when I get to claim the fullness of the promise and whatnot. So it's not I don't know what I guess the right way to word that. It's not the it's not the end all be all when you get baptized, and so it's more a type and foreshadow of something that's still yet to come, in my opinion. Anyways, that's how I see it.
Yeah. I don't know. We're just kind of going all over the place tonight. So
we've touched on
vegetables, chickens,
Mars,
Mars, Elon Musk.
I think we had some pretty good conversation in there. I think there was some benefit, and I think hopefully some encouragement, because I know I got some. I know today was one day that like Aaron said, like he's been busting his butt in the heat last week, and it would have been really easy for us to say, hey, let's just, tonight's once again yet not the best night for our circumstances to do a show, but I think that there's a really good there's some really good proofs for when the Father really wants to move, when the Spirit needs to move. He'll help bring us through whatever tribulation, the trials that we're facing in our personal physical lives, to make sure that happens if we're willing to be obedient. So
I think Sean found himself on the wrong part of YouTube. You came to the wrong place, man. If you think that religion is indoctrination and emotional slavery, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry somebody hurt you. I mean, honestly, if that's what you feel like, then you haven't experienced what the Bible really teaches, and I'm sorry that you have that experience. I hope you can watch. Dude, this is episode 85, and there are 2.5 hours videos, so there's probably about 200 hours worth of videos that, might change your mind. I don't know. But I'm sorry you feel that way, man, and I just have to respectfully disagree. So, but I do have to shout out to Robert and Cindy Sifranco. We love you guys. Thanks for coming out and being a part of our get-together we had.
So this is like almost everyone.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
As soon as we start talking about it, like everyone from the Shavuot gathering gets on here. Like, this is awesome. We had the Windsors. We had the only one we didn't get was the other Sampson, but I know I was texting him the other day, and he's been pretty busy with work. So yeah, it's just definitely good to see all you guys. We had some fun times talking about some of our enjoyable conversations that we had over the weekend that we got to spend together, and just some good time spent in prayer and getting into scripture and just being able to love on one another and I think develop some pretty good friendships too. Sometimes it's tough only seeing each other in a virtual space, but really getting to come together, hang out, like hug one another. Like, I know I'm a hugger. I know Aaron can deal with my hug sometimes, and getting to lay hands on each other, and that's really cool, and then just to see you guys on the other side. There's several people that I had never met, really hadn't been introduced to, that now I would consider friends, coming on the other side of the weekend. So definitely a blessing to see you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a great time. And I suggest, if you guys kind of want to know where we were at and what we were talking about, where our hearts were at with it, was read Matthew 4-7. That's where we were reading, and then Acts 2. And just kind of meditate on what Jesus's words were saying in there, and then what was the other side of that, what the fruit was that they were actually producing.
Sure.
In Acts 2. Because there's a lot of things. It's a good reminder. It's a healthy reminder, because we get caught up in a lot of things. We've talked about our reactions in the flesh over and over and over again, how we react in the flesh, and then it was just a big kick in the pants to read Jesus' own words and tell us, in that, blessed be these people, those who are, and I did a little word search, because I was like, it said, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. And I went and looked that up. I'm like, it's a really weird way to put it, like those that are broke in spirit,
yeah.
And it's actually like the humbledness that are humbled in spirit. It's just a weird way that they worded that, but you go through the blessed bees, and then he goes and he just starts talking about what it looks like. I mean, Sean in Kingdom and Context, they had all of that, the talk about what was the ministry of Yeshua. What was the ministry of Jesus?
The gospel that Jesus preached.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the gospels as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but what was the gospel that Jesus said he came to preach, and it was the gospel of the kingdom. He was telling people about the kingdom, the qualifications, the rules and regulations, what the expectations are, and he hammers through those so beautifully in that section of Matthew 4-7, where he talks and expands on. So you've heard that it says an eye for an eye. Well, I tell you, so you've heard that that if you kill somebody, it's murder. But I tell you, and it's just beautiful to see him break all those down. And it just, I mean, there's nothing you can fault him with. It says the crowds were amazed on how is he so learned? This guy that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that's what he expands on from that. Like everything he talks about after that was based on what he talks about in that, first section there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I know there's some people that have different opinions about the show, The Chosen. I think it was really cool in the final episode of the last season when he was prepping with Matthew, like he's like, I need you to write some stuff down, and through that episode, he's like, I'm going to go straight into, all these like rebukes towards people. And Matthew, he responds with like, you may want to just ease up a little bit. Like, so he's like, okay. So he takes it and he goes back and, he shows like pondering on it. And then, so he's like, okay, Matthew, I'm ready. So he's like, I want you to build a roadmap that people that are looking for me will see these people doing these things and know that they're the people that they need to be hanging out with. Paraphrasing, obviously. And so, he starts highlighting these different groups of people, the peacemakers, the humble, the poor in spirit, all these different groups of people who truly have matured to that point of they get it. They get it from that perspective, of the Father, that it's more than just pointing out everyone else's fruit problems. It's more than just, being able to do the entire Torah perfectly, but still, what am I lacking? Like you said to the rich young ruler, like it's more than that, and it takes that next level of maturing to get to that point of realizing that, hey, there are going to be people who don't know where to go. There's going to be people that are out there that are just lost. They've been lied to. They've been emotionally broken in some way, shape, or form. And they need to find people who are actually doing what I want them doing. And it looks like this. And so I think it's a really cool, it's pretty emotionally, and there's probably a little bit of, creative license that's taken with some eisegesis and, putting words in his mouth. But I think it resonates with the entirety of what his ministry actually was to accomplish. And so I think it's really cool of when we look at that, and as we've been talking about this journey of life and exposing ourselves and the fact that we're not perfect, that this is only where we are right now. This is not the entire journey that we're going to be on, from start to finish. So the fact that he kind of puts it in that perspective of being a roadmap for anybody looking for him, look for these people. They're the ones that are doing what I need them doing. Right. So definitely some cool stuff.
I'm sorry to anybody that was confused. I'm reading the chat over here, and
yeah.
There was Sean Griffin from Kingdom in Context, and then another Sean, and I didn't distinguish between the two. So no, I was not chastising Sean Griffin from Kingdom in Context. I apologize, Joy. Sorry, I didn't mean to. And if anybody set their phone down, was like, "Why is Aaron yelling at Sean?" No. Oh man.
Anyways.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a good time with this conversation, and it is, I need a Post-it that says, if you're having a bad day, you need to do a show, because that's, you get through the day, and then by the end of it, we're ready to roll at 9:00, and then by 12:00 or whatever, when we're done with the show, it's like, I feel so much better. I can breathe heavier, the weight's off my shoulders, the end of the day is here, tomorrow's going to be better, and it's and guys, you guys come in and you're part of the chat, and you guys have conversations and stuff. But I love the interaction. I love to see you guys are here. I love to see the views. I love to see the people that comment in the chat, comment in the comments for the video. It's encouraging to me, you know, and it keeps me going, because if I just did what I wanted to do, I wouldn't be here. And this is bigger than me, and we've established something with this group, and we don't know what's going to happen, where we're going to see ourselves in 6 months as far as this country, let alone you know, who knows what's going to happen. But I hope that in this process, because I'm one of those people that I'll strive on, like I'll be on, you know, we don't have internet, I'll be on ham radio, or, you know what I'm saying? Like I'll be doing something. So
unlicensed here.
Yeah. When you hear that SITREP, you know, that initial, you were part of the resistance, that's us, you know, no matter what form that looks like.
When the only media that's left is ham radio, like you are the resistance. Then it literally, reality is all these dystopian future type sci-fi movies where it's just like, oh my gosh, this remnant of mankind is coming together to battle the evil forces that have tried to take over the world. You know, it's definitely cool, because we're literally growing the body of people and whether it's this generation or the next, or wherever it is, we're responsible for shaping that generation in a way that, I mean, I think we've talked about the Joshua generation, but like the only reason they were the Joshua generation is because they had parents who went through all of the trial and tribulation and experienced all the heartache. And while may have been some of the people that were groaning and complaining, they matured, they learned their lesson, and then they knew how important it was to instill a trust in the Father and the Son, and instill those values into the next generation to make sure they didn't make the same stupid mistakes they made, right? Like if nothing else, you know, resonates with anybody who's a parent, like it's like, oh my gosh, my number one desire for my children is to not make all the same stupid mistakes that I did, and to have a better relationship with the Father earlier than I did. You know, like I think that's like the root of it. And so if that's our desire, the next generation will be the one that will be that voice that needs boldness in the final days, that will say, hey, regardless of whether my God, my King saves me and rescues me out of this trial, even if he doesn't, I'm still not going to compromise. I'm still not going to bow to the powers that be, and you know, choose, you know, to live is Christ, and to die is gain, you know, and be able to actually live that out.
So I saw the Safrancos had posted that they, you know, they're still dealing with a lot of struggles with the adoption process. So we definitely want to keep them in our prayers, guys. And they have, I don't have a link to the website. If anybody has a link to their update, the site that they have, if you guys, I think it's Cindy that's in, because I think she said that Robert was sleeping. If you guys want to post that.
I don't think she was saying he was sleeping. She was talking about him sleeping over the weekend when he kept falling asleep in his chair.
Yeah, but if you guys want to post something up where people can track the progress and donate if they feel led, please do. And then I saw Sean posted something here, and it's an interesting. He said, have you guys done a show on Trinitarian beliefs? Do you personally hold Trinitarian beliefs? That for me is like that's a difficult question, because what I thought I believed was Trinitarian doctrine, and then I studied Trinitarian doctrine and realized it wasn't what I believed. So, I don't think that God left heaven and came to earth and, you know, was the one walking around. I think he came in the power and authority of the Father, and a lot of the things like that he represented pointed us to the Father, which means there's a hierarchy. I think we've talked about this on the show several times. I know that there are people that view it differently, and I think it's just I think it's as humans, we don't have a full example of, you know, someone being able to take you know, a portion or a piece of themselves and put it into, you know, an empty vessel and give it life and that kind of stuff. So we don't have like a physical representation. So I see a lot of people struggle with this, you know, Unitarianism, oneness, Trinitarianism. There's a plethora of them. I think it's just a difficulty grasping the concept of something that physically we don't have like a real representation of. What do you think, Daniel?
I think we do have a physical representation of the fact that I'm a father and I have a son. Guess what? He has my DNA, and if I raise him right, not substituting myself for the father in this scenario, but like if I raise my son right, he's going to do the things that are right. And so I think that's the example that we have physically, and so I think that's why in the Word he's referred to as the Father, and there is a Son. It's not. I know Sean's used this phrase. It's not two fathers.
Right.
It's not two fathers. And so for me, it's simple, and it was a question that bugged the crap out of me. Part of my testimony, and I shout out to my beautiful wife in the chat, Brittany. She was one that, as we started earlier on in our walk, we had found a home fellowship of people that were trying to figure this stuff out, and we had brought a few other younger believing families into the fold, and that was the thing that got us kicked out. Was we asked the question, and it was my wife asked me the question, like, hey, something doesn't make sense. Why all this stuff that, like, it seems like there's two different people here? And so, like, it sent me into a whirlwind of, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't, with what I currently believe, which would fall under more like Trinitarian, lines, it didn't compute. I'm a very extremely logical, common sense type of person, and it just did not add up. And so it bugged me to the point of, like, okay, I brought it up in front of, the entire group. I'm like, hey, we've got some questions we want to talk about. And they're like, no, we're not talking about that here. That's not appropriate. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. Well, when's it appropriate?
I think that's part of the problem with modern Christianity is the tough questions. I don't think people are definitive, like have definitive answers, and they don't want to step on, other doctrines, pet doctrines, things like that. So I've asked questions from, very similar to what you were bringing up in churches, and they do a lot of tap dancing, when it comes to, what they believe. That's why I think I was more confused about anything. But when I read the scriptures, I get painted one picture, but then the doctrines that I was taught, in churches and things that they are one, and you get this picture of, Jesus being God. But then when you ask, well, how could he be God when God's sitting on his throne, and then you look in Revelations, he sits at the right hand of God, not in his lap or him. You know what I mean?
Well, going back to the topic of exposing SITREP, like that was one of the things for me that, like, I realized I was still just holding on to doctrines of men because I'm like, I was just repeating what I was hearing from Torah teachers, and when I was younger in my walk, and I was just parroting what I had heard. But I'm like, well, they're a Torah teacher, so they've got it right, and it was parroting that. And once again, the revelation came to me when it was like, you have not studied this out yourself. You have not searched the scriptures yourself on this matter to let the Holy Spirit be the one that's teaching you what is true and what is not. And so that was like gut punch, like number one for me, because it was like, oh my gosh, like I've been yapping all this stuff about, like, oh yeah, mainstream Christianity and all their, traditions of men. And here I am doing the same exact thing. And I hadn't actually gone and searched it out myself. And so when I did, it was like, oh my gosh, it's so simple. Like it was simple to me. So that's a probably long-winded answer to Sean's question. But
well, I know that there's a lot of catechisms in a lot of different churches. I was just talking to a friend of mine, Russ, who's going to a very spirit-filled church, but in their catechism, right, and in their bylaws or whatever that they make you sign that you agree with, right, that it has in there that you will believe that the Trinitarian doctrine, or you'll be ostracized from the church. Like you either believe what we believe or you won't be a part of our body. And I think it's a very kind of crazy way to look at things, because when you ask somebody how that functionally works, how they can be all three one, right, it says they have the same will, right, it says they have different personalities, they're given their own titles, that they're individuals. Now, the only thing that really throws like a big wrench in that is where does the Holy Spirit fit into this? And I think the best explanation I've heard is kind of an explanation of us, right? That when you look at computer software, you have hardware, you have software, and you have the internet, right? And the best explanation that we kind of came up with this, and I don't know if it was you or I.
It was definitely you and me.
and so when we talked about like our flesh, what our flesh equals would look like, the computer or cell phone that you're on right now, just the plastic and the hard drive and all of the bits and bobs, right? That would be like our body, but it has to have software to function, and that software would be the ruach, or the spirit that's been put into that person. Then you have the Holy Spirit, which is like being connected to the internet, like as being a greater connection to other computers and other devices. Like, and to me, it made sense, like having that understanding. And then thinking about, you have Yeshua, who was born in the flesh. He was a man. It says he was, 100% man, but then 100% Elohim, right? So then it says he left his first estate, or not left his first estate. I'm sorry, I apologize. That he emptied himself. Then when he was baptized at 30, they saw the dove, right? The Holy Spirit, the representation, fill him back up at the start of his ministry at 30 years old. So there's a process there of emptying himself and filling himself up, that there's a man that's there that had free will. When you look at the Garden of Gethsemane, when he's praying to the Father and saying, "Can you take this cup from me? Is there any other way?" Why would
I think you answered the question right there, though. Like, he was praying to the Father.
Right.
He wasn't praying to himself. He wasn't like.
I love that meme. Have you seen that meme of dear Father or dear me?
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, and it is a. I think that the thing that helped make it simple for me is because I had never. Hard truths. I had never read Hebrews alongside, the Torah, and realized that they were like saying the same things, right? And so, understanding that the priesthood and the function of it, the purpose of it, and the active role that's in full action right now, completely, like. I've been involved in several different court proceedings. I understand that there's no need for a mediator if a mediator literally by definition means that there's someone as a third party. Like, it's not two parties and one of them gets to call themselves one party and the mediator. Like, that's not fair. It doesn't make sense in my head. And so to be a mediator, to be a middleman, to be someone who's interceding only can happen if it's three separate parties in that equation. So that's where it clicked for me. It's like, duh, okay, I don't have, dude. It was literally like 6 months of going back and forth. And the guy that I went to that specific home group with, I worked with him. So I was like, what about this? A conversation all of the. I'm like, dude, it won't leave my spirit. It's so heavy on me. Like, that I know that the Spirit is pushing me, like, to search this out. Like, I'm dying to know the answer to this, because it's like I feel like I'm drowning in the weight of this question, and I can't let it go. And he's like, dude, it's not that big a deal. I'm like, but it is to me. Like something doesn't make sense with what I currently understand. Something's not jiving. And it was definitely the priesthood part that helped me understand, and then therefore be able to then explain to my wife, who was still young in her walk too, like, this is all the stuff that we read in the Torah. That's why all this stuff still applicable, and it's still happening.
And Sean put in there, says there's a difference between the 3-in-1 classic Trinitarian doctrine versus the Trinitarian doctrine that says the Son is the Father. And yeah, I mean, I don't care what shape you want to make it, right? I mean, there's also 7 spirits. My mom and I have debated this very often. So wouldn't it be 7 spirits of the Ruach, right? Including the Ruach HaKodesh. So you have 7 spirits, then you have Yeshua, then you have God. So wouldn't it be like, what would 9 be? Like, if it Ninetarian? I mean,
Ninetarian.
So, like, the way that I kind of look at it is, the scriptures tell us the Holy Spirit points us to Yeshua, Yeshua points us to the Father. We don't see it where it's you can pick any one and they point you to the other one, right? You can't pick God and then he points you to the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit points you to Jesus. It gives us a lineup, and that is a directional. The Holy Spirit points you to Yeshua, Yeshua points you to the Father. So to me, that looks more like, a hierarchy than they're all in one. So that's just the way that I look at it. Because like I said, you can't seek out God and then find Jesus and then find the Holy Spirit. It says that no one comes to the Father except through me, Yeshua, and then no one finds Yeshua unless they're inspired by the Holy Spirit. So there is a succession to having that mediation to the Father. It's not, you can't find one and then get the other, and then what, like, it's not like this spinning wheel of which whenever you get. So that's kind of what I see. I agree with what,
Am I allowed to like dote on my wife in here? Is that allowed?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Like the question she just asked your mom, like in all because we all love Mama Sampson, but like that's the question. That's the actual question, and I'm pretty sure that's the question that she originally asked me. That was like, oh my God, babe, like here I was thinking I'm like starting to get like advanced, like I felt like I was in like 11th grade, maybe a junior, about to graduate just high school in this walk, and then she asked me this question, and I felt like I literally hadn't even got out of preschool yet, because I was like, if I don't know how to answer that question, like how do I explain all this other stuff? And that's the question she asked with the whole Echad and being one, and like if that's true, if that remains true, why isn't that the definition still when he's using that? So anyways,
yeah, no, I see, just like everything else in religion, it's not the far extremes, right? Because I've even seen in my own walk where I was raised, it's almost off the tip of your tongue, like, right? It's just like that idiom that we have is thank you, Jesus, for this food, right? And then realizing that the Father is the one who Jesus points us to and says, the Father is the one who gives you the food, not Jesus, right? So why am I thanking Yeshua when it's the Father who he tells us the Father takes care of the birds of the field? So why would he not take care of you when it comes to your food? So who am I thanking, right? I can see in the religious aspect where you can be over here and you can idolize Yeshua to the point of the position of God, which I think we're not supposed to do.
Position of the Father, you mean?
Yeah, the position of the Father in heaven. And then on the other spectrum is I've seen people that have taken it the opposite way and strip Yeshua of everything that he's done and earned and basically put him on the level of man, or just disregard him altogether. I mean, we've all seen that. People who disregard Paul, then they disregard the Gospels, and they get rid of Jesus, and they go back 10 steps and go back to Judaism, right? Where it's just God, and that removes all of the work of what Yeshua did in becoming the high priest, right? So it's, again, like everything that I see, it's not one or the other, it's in between. It's not this far extreme religious belief. It's not this far extreme religious belief. It's somewhere in the middle. And, I've talked to my mom, and I don't think she that word in Eastern Orthodoxy is what we came up in, has a description of, giving them equal authority, giving them, the kind of different personas and everything. So there is an attachment to the Trinitarian, but I don't think, just like I told her when I asked her the questions about Trinitarianism, I was like, I don't think you're a Trinitarian either, Mom. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's like, I think we have this concept of what we believe Trinitarianism is, but what true Trinitarianism is a completely different thing, that they're all the same thing and they function, like God left his throne to come walk on earth as, man God, and there's and then when he died, then he left his spirit, so that means there's no God in heaven, there's no man, so they didn't split up and then come back together again and all that kind of stuff. So
it's I know where the the pointed edge of this conversation gets to so often is because of the, like Sean mentioned, the salvation implications that are attached to it in a lot of people's mind. And I've been it's been a thing that's heavy on my spirit again. Like I haven't been able to let it go, and understanding, like I tell people, like, because I'm still working through this, so it's not something that I like declaring or anything like this, or trying to have anyone believe what I believe. But I'm starting to think that there are no salvation issues. Like there's not like certain doctrines that are salvational in nature, because I see that the Father shows mercy to whom He will, and with our show with Jeff, a few weeks ago, talked about the salvation, mercy, and grace, and how interconnected they are. And the fact that there are people that you and I would say that person doesn't have salvation because we see this snapshot of their life, right? But Yeshua says there will be people that He says, because you were doing all these things, keeping all this Torah, and they're like, when did we do that? When did we give you food when you were hungry? When did we give you drink when you were thirsty? He's like, anything that you did for the least of these, you're doing it like you were. So he has a whole different perspective than we do as mere mortal finite men on the Father's plan for salvation. And I think that I know for a fact it is not my job. And I really think I can clearly say that it's none of our job to determine what is a salvational issue and because going back to the fruit inspector conversation, I cannot tell you don't have salvation for failing to keep a commandment that maybe I have kept that one, but maybe I've struggled with one that you have, and so this is like this whole circular reason of how can I possibly say that this is a salvational issue about anything, like the Trinity or anything, because the Father will show mercy to whom He will. And at the thief on the cross, at the end, He was repentant. He knew who deserved what. He knew it was Him that deserved to be there and not Yeshua. And that understanding in the last inkling of His life, in the last few breaths of His life, had that understanding, and the Father showed mercy to Him. That's to me, that's how simple it is. And so I think going forward, I've made this this change and be able to I pretty firmly say that I don't think I can determine anything being a salvational issue.
Yeah.
If you come out and say that Yeshua is not the Messiah, that's you stating that. That's not me determining that you don't now have salvation because you've rejected Yeshua as the Messiah. That has nothing to do with my perception of what you got going on in your life. And so outside of any of that stuff, like I understand that, the unforgivable sins, that's between them, whoever blasphemed the Holy Spirit, whoever, that's between them and the Father. Like that, I am in no position of authority in that scope. So I think that's why it's a struggle for me, especially with this topic of saying you're out of the faith if you don't have this, Roman Catholic understanding of the Trinity.
And part of the problem is, and I have to say, this is one of those instances where I would say that translational error is probably one of the most difficult, because just saying God, big G God, like we look at, John 1, right? That the Word was with God and the Word was God. That term would be Elohim, and Elohim in the Hebrew is a descriptor of where they come, like a being from the heavens, from the higher level of heavens, right? It's saying, like, we're Hoosiers. Elohim, angels are called Elohim. Men were called Elohim at times. I mean, I think Abraham, I think Elijah. I
know Joseph was.
Yeah, so I mean, several people were called, Elohim. It was an exalted position, a terminology. And so when it's saying that he was with Elohim, but then he was Elohim, well, the fallen angels were called B'nai Elohim, right? The sons, right, of this place, this place of creation. You look at Adam. Adam was called a B'nai Elohim, right? A son of Elohim. And God is called the Elohim of Elohims. And he says that he sees no other Elohims before him, right? There's a whole, like, it's that concept of saying that he's God, but it's actually like a descriptor, what would you call it? kind of a pronoun, like a prefix. Like, you know, this is Yahweh Elohim, right? This is Yahweh from the seventh layer, or the top layer of the firmament, right? That's his descriptor. That's where he's from. That's his zip code.
Then they got short and just called him the Most High. They're like, he's up at the top, like the absolute tippity top. He's up there.
So yeah, I mean, I think that we have that problem, because you see a lot of things like where Yeshua uses terminologies like "I am," or when he says, "You've seen the Father, you see me." Well, he's coming in the 100% authority of the Father. So is the Holy Spirit. That when the Holy Spirit comes, but they have an aligned will with the Father, but they also have different personas. They're personalities, I guess I should say. But they're in 100% alignment with the Father. They don't go free will, willy-nilly, and doing whatever they want, right? Even as much as I think Jesus didn't want to die on the cross, he was going to do and sacrifice himself for the greater cause of the kingdom to come. So, I mean, I think he deserves an Elohim position, right? Because of what he's done, what he was. He was the first of creation. And there's multiple things that say what he was. What it doesn't say, though, is that he is God incarnate, right? It says that he is Elohim in the flesh. So he is just like, you know, you could say that the fallen angels, at one point, they shed their first estate. They became Elohim in flesh. You know, they were from, you know, there's a lot to go into. I think we have some misunderstandings when it comes to understanding this because of translation issues, where things were just kind of thrown in there instead of looking at it from a Western understanding and trying to apply this. Again, just like you said, I don't think that it's a salvational issue. It's a misunderstanding issue. It's a not having a full grasp of the understanding of things. And I don't think that, you know, when the Holy Spirit calls you and draws you to Yeshua, and Yeshua points you to the Father, you are part of a covenant now. There is no like escaping that covenant. Like, you are part of a covenant, and God is going to show you the passageway, work with you in your walk, and then make sure that you are a complete tapestry, like we were talking about earlier, by the end of it. So what you may understand now may not look like what you understand at the end. And you may never fully grasp all the concepts you need to. I'm sure there's going to be a Q&A session when we get to the gates, right? We're going to be like, hey, but what about this? And they're going to be like, guys, like, leave your documents at the door.
They have an FAQ, handout for everyone to, like, all right, you know, make sure you grab one, and only one. There's only one, enough for everyone to get one. You know, it's like, okay.
Say leave your documents at the door,
guys. What was the deal?
We'll tell you
what was the deal with the Trinity? What was that such a big deal? Why did everyone tell me that I was not a Christian if I didn't believe this? So, you know, like, it's just, it's a. I won't go there. I was going to make a. What is the Watchtower? Is it the Watchtower?
Yeah.
They have like the little pamphlets, like all the different reasons, everything happening in the world.
Well, I mean, what was the passage where, if anybody's got it on the top of their head, where Jesus says, like, if you deny me, like, if you deny that the Son is of the Father, if anybody has it quickly, because we'll just look
sword
at
sword drill time. There's prize for whoever finds it first. and Sean, you're disqualified because you probably got it memorized.
That's deny me before men. Oh, and who's got it? If you, what was I saying? If you deny that the Son came in the flesh, I think is what it says. Because I think a lot of people.
It's 1 John 2:23. You want to pull it up and?
Yeah. Let's pull it up and let's look at it real quick. We're running over a little bit, but I want to touch on this real quick because I think it's one of those abused texts, because I think it says if you deny that Yeshua came in the flesh or something like that, because there were a sect of Gnostics who believed that he was a spirit only, and I think that they were touching on that idea.
Okay, I got it. Let's see.
That he was born of a virgin, all that kind of stuff. Let's take a look at it. I don't want to misquote it. So is this the 20 here?
Yeah, it starts at verse 20. It
says, you, however, have an anointing from the Holy One, and all of you know the truth. I have not written you because of your lack of knowledge of truth, but because you have it, and because no lie comes from the truth. Who is a liar if it is not the one who denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist who denies the Father and the Son. Whoever denies the Son does not have the Father, but whoever confesses the Son has the Father as well. I don't see anything there that says that that's, a Trinitarian doctrine, that they're all one. You know what I'm saying? Like that are applying salvation to a Trinitarian doctrine when this is saying that whoever denies the Son does not have the Father. We just talked about that a little bit ago. What Jesus said in Matthew says, a good tree does not produce bad fruit, and a bad tree does not produce good fruit. So what is the pathway to get to the Father? The Holy Spirit guides you to Yeshua. Yeshua guides you to the Father. I mean, I don't know what else. Go ahead. Do you got something else?
No, I think that next verse, it continues on and hammers the point home. And I just not to be nitpick, but I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. I want to find the verse that you were quoting just now, because I feel like I've heard it that says, "No one comes to me," being Yeshua, unless the Father first draws him. Is that the one that you were talking about? Is that the verse that you were talking about? Or
yeah, I mean, that was one of them. Yeah, because I'm just trying to run through.
That is John 6:44.
So my mom was saying John 1. Well, I'm not throwing John 1 out, Mom. If you read it, in the beginning was the Word. So in the beginning, right? That's going back to Genesis 1:1, right? The beginning of all creation, and we were told that He is the first of all creation, right? So that doesn't disagree with that. The Word was with God, with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. He was with Elohim in the beginning. Though through him all things were made. Without him nothing that was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light. All of mankind, the light shines in the darkness. The darkness has not overcome it. So I don't see anything that disregards with that either.
Well, and I think that in the passage you just read, I think a part that people get missed is the fact that I think it's the word through. That actually means more of a for his behalf, on his behalf. This is the one that you were looking for, John 6:44. It says, "Stop grumbling among yourselves." Jesus replied, "No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day, as it is written in the prophets, and they will all be taught by God. Everyone who has heard the Father and learned from him comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. Only he has seen the Father." Yeah. I don't know. I just we could probably go on and on and on. It's crazy, Sean. Honestly, that you brought this topic up, because it's been something that's obviously been still a big topic of conversation as in conversation just in the past 6 months. It seems like it's never ending. That stuff comes back to this one, and regardless of where the topic starts out, regardless of whether you start talking about aliens or Shavuot, like it comes back to this somehow, shape, or form. It's really interesting.
I just pulled up the Greek, right? Because I'm using Elohim, right, in a terminology that was a passage that we only have in Greek through John, right? So just to kind of give you guys an idea of what we're talking about here. So. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, Logos," right? And the Word, Logos, was with Theon. And the definition of Theon is a deity. So they had, in Greek, they had lots of deities. So this is again saying it's no different than the Elohim, but it's in the Greek. So it says, "The Word was with Theon, a deity, and the Word, Logos, was a deity, Theos." So it doesn't say that he is the God of all creation. It says he is a deity, or an Elohim, as they would have used it in the Greek or in the Hebrew. So it's not saying that it was that in the beginning, because how can you have a creator of all things who then creates something, the firstborn of all things, but it's still part of him? right? Other than what you described earlier, where you can have a child, right? And your child is a part of you, right? Is created from you, and we're created in God's image. We're, as creators of children, we created like God did. He created something from himself that is not him, but it is his son, from the only way that we can explain it. I mean, that's the only way I can say it. It doesn't mean that they're not the exact same thing. I mean,
I think the struggle lies in the fact that people try to not agree with like classic Trinitarianism, and they try to like interpret their own version of understanding, but then a lot of times there's some mental gymnastics that are still involved, when I think that at the core of it it's pretty simple. Like it doesn't have to be a super, drawn out explanation of the matter, because I don't know, but that's just me. I'm black and white. Everything is simple to me. Like once I get it to those black and white terms, it's not hard anymore. Like it's black or it's white.
I think the belief that there is a hierarchy, a structure of authority, is a lot easier to understand than trying to jump through loopholes of trying to explain how they're all one, but they're different, but they're, one can be here, one can be here, one can be here, but they're all the same being. To me, I'm an Occam's razor kind of person. What is the easiest way to explain it? If there's a complicated way to explain it, an easy way to explain it, it's probably the easiest way. And I mean, that's just how that's my understanding.
Anybody who has any military experience whatsoever, and from that perspective, I think it's probably that much simpler for them to understand it as well, because guess what? There is one general, that is at the chief of staff of the entire, that specific branch of the military. There's one at the top for each one of the branches, right? And then commander in chief, whatever. But the NCO, that's an E5, that there's hundreds of thousands of higher ranked NCOs and higher ranked officers above him. He is still operating in the authority given to him by the senior most person in charge. It doesn't mean that he himself has his own authority that he's operating under. He's using the authority of the one that will back him up when you try to go against what he says. You're not going to get two different answers. You're going to get the same answer, because and so that part as well is easier for me to understand, because I have that experience and I understand what it's like. And I've seen it from both sides, both on the person getting yelled at by an NCO and thinking that he was just some, guy that wanted to be big, bad macho, but understanding then once I became an NCO that, okay, hold on, this is not my authority. I'm literally just relaying the same information that I got from the next level up. That's all it is.
Yeah. The only problem with this, I'd love to have like a conversation, like an actual like panel, right? Of 2 versus 2, kind of like what Sean's done before, like a panel kind of debate on this. The only problem that I see is because there are so many people that claim to be theologians in this line of theory, and they're very avid that they're correct. And I have seen these kind of debates turn bloody and you know what I mean, like brutal. So I'd love to see like a healthy debate on it. But so far, like when I've actually tried to watch like actual debates on this kind of topic, it's brutal. It just goes back and forth at which, my perspective versus your perspective. I read it says this way. You read it says this way. And,
And I think that at the root of that though, when it gets that way, I think you tend to see the message of, well, you're no longer a Christian if you don't believe it my way, only comes from one specific side. I really, that's what I've seen. Not just including seeing some Sean debates on the topic, but just in conversation with my dad, like personal experience, conversations with my family who's been in church. I mean, my grandfather was a pastor. He passed away. My grandmother took over being the pastor. When I came to this understanding, I'm like, oh my gosh, my entire family will be excited to know that I now read the Bible for myself, and I'm gonna go tell them what I found. And it did not go over well when I'm like, yo, this whole Trinity thing's kind of bunk. Like it didn't go over well.
And you have to understand, like the compassionate side of me takes over. And then I see the people in the Torah community who say, I don't want to dishonor the Father by putting someone else in place of where the Father should be in my heart, right? But then I see the other people who are on the other side who say, I don't want to be wrong about this, and then, deny Yeshua, right? So, like, again, it's that swinging of the pendulum to one side or the other.
And I think the cool thing for me was, though, like, yes, there was a lot of people like, okay, well, you're just throwing out everything that Yeshua did and was. And I'm like, no, on the contrary, I added so much more to what he actually did do, because prior, all he did was die on the cross, and that just magically took care of everything. I mean, like in my understanding, that's what I've been taught. And now I have the fullness of understanding of what he actually is doing currently, not just one time, but what he's still actively doing. And it expanded and exploded my view of what he's doing. And so, on the contrary of it taken away from him, like, oh my gosh, he gets all that much more glory and recognition, and for not just what he has done, what he's earned, that the position that he's earned, but what he's still actively doing, and it makes it that much more tangible and something that I can actually hold on to, as opposed to, well, I guess some guy died thousands of years ago. I guess I'll believe that. It's something that's happening right now, tangibly, that I can hold on to and feel that I'm actually close to, instead of being some distant memory that I got told a story of one time and now everything's hunky dory. So I don't know. That's my experience of it. It doesn't take away anything. It adds so much more to what he actually did to us.
It's a lack of understanding. That just. There's so much Western Christianity that we're missing, because for the longest time they only told us to read the back half of the book. What I mean? So we're missing so much. What do they say? Christ prophesied as Christ fulfilled. Like, he was all throughout. The priesthood and all that stuff was foretelling a position that he was going to fulfill. The earthly concepts of them were just type and shadow of what. So I get it. And it's just, like I said, it's one of those things. I understand why a lot of people tap dance around it, because for some, it is a salvational issue. I mean, I saw AC posted up there a couple of fellowships that I'm familiar with that will cut ties with you if you're not a card-carrying Trinitarian. And I'm just, I don't have to, I mean, mine probably doesn't align with what, my perspective doesn't probably align with what 100% Sean or you believe. Like, I think Yeshua, because I view God as being, the earth is his footstool. So he doesn't come here and rule and reign. He sends Yeshua back to rule and reign for 1,000 years, right? That's what was promised to him. So he's still in the heaven of heavens when Yeshua is here with the New Jerusalem. So I don't see that they're both here, ruling and reigning.
That was one thing that we came when we did the Revelation series that came out. I was like, "What are you talking about?" like it's right there. But that was, and I get it. That's the cool thing that's why I think I like our dynamic, because I don't agree on everything, and I think that it's a good thing for a lot of people, is that it challenges us. Like, if you're just sitting inside of an echo chamber all the time, like, oh my gosh, it's so boring to hear people talk in their echo chambers and hear their echoes just constantly talk about what they're talking about. And so, like, I enjoy being challenged on what I believe, because, like, part of my testimony earlier, where, like, I realized I hadn't actually went and searched it out myself. I still, once again, was just leaning on the tradition and the teaching that someone else had given, instead of actually going and do it myself. And that's, I have to make sure I don't find myself there again, because I was like, oh my God, like hypocrisy el numero uno. It was bad. It was not a good few months while I was going through that rebuke, anyways.
I wanted to shout out Incarnate. Unlimited was in the chat. I saw him pop in here earlier. He's been in the chat. I would just want to give him a shout out, because I shouted out pretty much everybody else in the chat. So, what's up, brother? It's good to see you in the chat. Yeah, I mean, and we're coming up on 3 hours, so we should probably cut it here in just a couple minutes. But
Dude, okay, I want to say one more thing. Here's my final thoughts, and it comes from a comment that Patricia just made. Um, Iron sharpening iron. One of the conversations we got into the last night of our Shavuot fellowship camping trip was that very topic, and I don't know if anybody else out there carries a knife, has ever used a knife, has ever sharpened a knife, but you know what you don't sharpen it with? Another knife. Iron's not very good at sharpening iron. You know what sharpens iron? A stone. And so we got into this conversation, man, and it was like, it's the spirit talking. We're like, oh my gosh, this is coming out of my mouth, but it's like brand new to me. Like, it's not me talking. And so it was really cool because it's like, I was sitting there wearing my neck knife, and I'm like, iron doesn't sharpen iron. Like, and there was like, oh my gosh, it's a stone. The stone is the standard, the cornerstone, the chief cornerstone. And it like blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God. Like, that's actually what that was talking about, is like, the stone remains the same. The stone is the one that does the sharpening. But as iron sharpens iron, guess what I point you to? The stone. I'm not comparing you to myself. And this ties all back into the fruit inspector thing. I'm not comparing you to my standard of my fruit. The stone is the perfect example of the fruit we should have. And that's the standard we should be comparing ourselves and pointing our brothers and sisters to, is that stone. That same stone that doesn't change. It puts it in the hands of a master bladesman, puts the same edge, the same sharpness on the blade, regardless of how nicked up it was, how dull it was. All the time it's going to be the same, and it doesn't change. And so thank you, Patricia, for bringing that up, because that was a really cool thing that came out the other weekend, and it was like mind blowing for me, as the spirit kind of like dropped that little nugget on me. I'm like, this makes so much more sense now. It like added so much more depth to that. Because we always use that term like, oh yeah, brothers, iron sharpening iron. This is good, and we're like, we've never even sharpened a knife. Like, that's not how that works. So anyway, that's my closing arguments. I'll turn it over to you, buddy.
Well, the judge finds in the case of the defendant. No.
Right.
Oh man, no, it's been a fantastic show, guys. I thank you, everybody who's been in the chat, everybody who's been, communicating, talking, staying involved. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. You guys, you're the best part of SITREP. So we thank you guys. I'm trying to think. There was something I was going to touch on. Over the next couple of weeks, I am trying to line up. I was supposed to have one today, but he had an event to go to, so we kind of double booked, and I didn't want him to have to rush. So if anybody is interested in the Go Therefore conference, that will be in. I'll have more of the information. I think it's outside of Dayton. I know that because I've been there. The Go Therefore conference, we're going to have several of the speakers. I'm in process of getting them over the next. It's the end of July is when the conference is. So if you go to Go Therefore, you can see the list of speakers. You can go to Dr. Mike Spalding's page on Facebook, and he's got a list of all the speakers. But we're going to have quite a few of them over the next couple of weeks come on and chat with them and stuff. So I'm excited for that because some really cool brothers that I enjoy fellowshipping with will be able to get them on and hang out with us. So we're looking forward to that. I don't know. There was another point and I completely lost it, so I'll have to remember after the fact. So again, thanks everybody for being in the chat, and for don't forget to like and share and subscribe, do all that fun stuff. That helps with the YouTube algorithms. And I love the comments. I get some really cool comments in some of the videos. I'll go through and look at the in the YouTube thing for Take on the World TV, and then see some of the comments. There's some cool comments in there. There's some that are in another language. I think they link to a porn site, so don't click on those. I try to delete those when they show up. I don't know where the Russian porn bots just come out of nowhere for these Take on the World shows, man. They're crazy in there. But I'm just filling time, guys. I don't know what else to talk about. I figure we might just make it a flat 3 hours.
Right,
like
at 3.
4 minutes or 3 minutes and 8 seconds. I don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate
like a fuzzy thing going in front of my camera. Look like
no, it's been twice, dude. I've seen it like 2 or 3 times.
Well, there was a
I'm
big
I'm gonna ignore
mosquito going around here somewhere. That may have been what it was. But I see it on my screen. It looked like a ghost floating in front of my face.
Yeah, I was gonna mention it earlier. I'm like, I'm not gonna get us distracted on that because we did talk about Mars and UFOs earlier. So. and everyone that we talked about earlier in the conversation showed up here on the stream tonight. So if it was an alien, a Musk Martian, we'll act like that didn't happen. Oh, you haven't heard that? I came up with that just now. Thanks for laughing
that's
at
great.
that.
We'll have to use that. They'll make that a thumbnail one of these days. It'll have a little Musk Martian.
That's funny. All right, dude, I gotta
Musk's
get some sleep,
Mars
bro.
mission and the 144,000.
Oh, dude, the ways that conversation could go.
Oh,
all right,
man.
yeah, I gotta get some sleep, bro. My wife made me a chiropractor appointment at 6:30 this morning, so I need.
I got another.
I like that last comment there, Sean. It's
What did he say?
He said, let's talk about how we're going to create a sustainable network for supplies to help the body endure the years ahead, leading up to 2030.
Well, yeah, we tried to do that, Sean, earlier, and then you showed up. We actually talked about and discussed your...
Talked about Goodland, yep. Gave you a shameless plug.
We started realizing that if we mentioned somebody's name, they showed up in the chat. So we were just dropping anything and everything we could. So you were in there, like, somebody will have to tag the time when we talked about Sean. It was like 23 minutes and yeah, no, and if you I don't know if somebody can drop I think you have to be a moderator to actually put a link in there.
Yeah, I'm not even a moderator on my own show, so I don't know.
All I have to do is put your YouTube channel in. I can put it in there. You just have to link me your YouTube channel.
Like I don't need to be a moderator. It's like there's people that have the wrench that do a better job of keeping an eye on the chat sometimes than I do. But I've always thought it was funny. But Sean, seriously, the whole Goodland thing, that's pretty cool. My background in the logistics industry has made the last year and a half interesting to watch how things have been going. It's really interesting in how they are systematically shutting down some of that stuff, and how easy it really would be to start it back up in a private sector. So it's cool stuff. I'm really looking forward to what comes out of that.
Yep. So make sure you guys check out Goodland, the Goodland app, and Sean Griffin's talked about it a couple of times here recently. I think it was 2 weeks ago. He had a big announcement on a Wednesday, and I took the night off and got to watch all that. So that's a really cool thing we want to see moving forward. That's going to be a good avenue for not only us as content creators, but anybody who's a convention host, a Christian business. It's going to be pretty cool to see. I love when people get these cool ideas. That's there's a gap or a void in our community, and somebody goes, hey, let's fill that, and builds that bridge. So I appreciate Sean and everybody else who was tied to that and was working on that. I think man, who else? I think that was originally I don't want to say, because a friend of ours that had recently just passed away, who was a friend of Sean's show. I got to be on one of the shows with him here recently. I think he was one of the co-founders for that, but I don't want to state that if that wasn't the truth. So
yeah, but I don't 100% know all the ins and outs, but yeah, it's definitely gonna be good stuff coming out of it for sure.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it is that time. We thank you guys for coming out and being a part of the show tonight. We're planning on some guests, one at least, for next week, next Wednesday's show. It's like I said, it's going to be tied to the Go Therefore conference. So we're going to work on that and try to get that all lined up. Until then, guys, may Yah bless and keep you guys. We'll see you next weekend.
Shalom.